This stream is for entertainment purposes. The opinions expressed by the participants might be exaggerated for comedic effect. Harsh language can be used. Thought-provoking or controversial topics may be discussed.
Hello and welcome to Tear Off Your Skin. It's been a while since I did like a old school Tear Off Your Skin because those show come when we have a topic to discuss, right? The whole point of this show is to figure out some stuff about the hobby. So when we have like some question we want to discuss, some point we want to make, or some idea we want to explore, that's when it's time to tear off our skin and look what's underneath. And today I'm joined by Jeff, same old G, which was the one that actually proposed that subject of GM Fiat and GM authority and GM responsibility. I think it was an interesting one. And Tyler decided to join us for this conversation as well, since it's been a while since we got to stream together too. Well, not that long. You were on for the last marathon.
Yeah.
But
A couple weeks though.
yeah, a couple of weeks. So welcome everybody. And so how do we start that? Like Fiat. What do we mean by GM by Fiat? We're not talking about the car. People were talking about the car in the Zonalar. Hello, people in chat.
I don't want a car, no Fiat for me.
Yeah.
Boom.
Obviously, we're not talking about the Italian car. We're talking about the Fiat mean it be it done, right? It mean like it's something that you say and it's Latin for may it be done.
Mhm.
Like in the Lord's Prayer, voluntas tuas fiat. Fiat voluntas tua, that your will be done. Right, there you go.
Yeah, for me, the definition of Fiat is all these things that we do in an RPG, not just the GM, the player as well. We're gonna have to maybe separate the two for the sake of discussion. But these things that are not legitimized by rules. They are not necessarily written black on white in the book. So, for example, let's say Burning Wheel, for example, you adjudicate obstacles.
Yep.
So when you are the GM, you're gonna have to choose: is it obstacle 1, obstacle 2, obstacle 3, 4, 5, 6, target numbers? So it's always gonna be Fiat. So if you play with a rude GM, it's gonna have maybe a little bit higher obstacles. If you play with a slack off GM, it's gonna be a little bit lower obstacle. It changes in the personality, it changes in the mood, so it's not very strict. How many enemies? How often do you roll the dice in a session? Some people they're gonna role play for an hour, no dice roll. Some other we're gonna dice roll all the time. You're gonna ask for dice rolls all the time. So Fiat for me is that the zone where there are very meaningful decisions that can be made. So for example, in my mind, you can play the same game, same set of rules, but you're gonna have completely different experiences because one GM is gonna have a certain Fiat about it, and so you're gonna roll maybe 2 times during the session, 3 times in a 2-hour session, but you change table, the same game played raw, and you're gonna get another experience completely just because of Fiat. That's what I mean personally by Fiat. That's the way I'd like to talk about it today.
Yeah. What's your initial thought about the topic, Tyler?
I'm glad you bring up that games having, you can play in the same written game and actually come out with totally different things, because my first thought was a topic that people have been talking about a lot. Some of my videos that got unexpectedly popular on why I prefer crunchier systems. And part of that I didn't talk about in depth is that ideally, though of course you are right, a crunchier system refines that GM Fiat down to a smaller amount, because you have in the game, this is how X, Y, and Z works. And the less rules that you have, the lighter that the system is, the more often that you're going to have to be making those Fiat calls. So likewise, though, you could adjudicate in the opposite direction, and you could adjudicate that you're not using a given rule. I think primarily, I'll sound like a broken record, how much Fiat you should be using is going to vary from table to table, and it's something that you should get out of the way in the first place in the session 0 and not shock your players with how much you're like I'll tell my players session 0, like, yeah, you don't ask me to roll something, don't stop every 2 seconds, wait, just do something, and then I'll stop you if I need you to roll something. I don't I don't need I'm not a big fan of the roll to go to the bathroom GMs. That's
Yeah, and we're talking about a bit about in the pre-stream. I think it was before you joined, Tyler, about especially like those crunchier rule system that try to put some more guidance into like the obstacle and stuff like that. And what I was saying about that is that oftentimes, like, yes, it tries to reduce the GM's fiat in a sense, but I find oftentimes like it does more harm than good, because then like you have all this guidance and all those charts that some GM is gonna try to autistically follow, right? And then like that slow the game down, right? Instead of like just making a vibe, like, going by vibe, right? Obviously, like the guidance being there, you can and should ignore it. If you like, you should read it when you read the rule book and kind of integrate it. But during session, like, it's not time to pause the game and say, well, let me check. Okay, so now the ground is a bit wet and this chasm is 15 feet and your shoes haven't been fixed in months.
right.
So, and like all like those different, so the obstacle is going to be that, right? Just
right.
If you pause the game to consider all those things, it's not gonna it's gonna do more harm than good, right? That's my point.
There's the amount of fiat that you use and how crunchy the game is are sort of at odds with the flow of the gameplay. So, different groups' mileage will vary on that, but yeah, I definitely agree there are some games that take it way too far to one extreme, and I wish crunchier games would be more clear that a lot of especially chart-based mechanics, are more examples. It's more to give you an idea, sort of a guideline, than something that you're supposed to reference in hold on, let me, in this tense situation, totally break the flow of the game and see, roll, a D10,000. Hackmaster makes fun of this. If you've, it's a fun system to read through if you've never read through it. Yeah. So I think that idea is basically, when you have GM fiat, you can have GM fiat that's sprung out of thin air that is just totally random because there aren't any of these charts, there aren't any of these hardline mechanics here. Or you can have GM fiat, just like you can have an opinion that's, yes, it's an opinion, but it's guided by actual facts, it's guided by concrete things. Or you could have an opinion that's, just totally pulled out of your ass.
You see, this is the thing that's important. That's interesting for me. The thing that is common to all RPG is fiat. Fiat is common to all RPG. It's gonna be there no matter what, because it's that place where you kind of have to interpret how to use the rule, when to use the rule, and how much of it you're gonna use. So it's that place where the experience becomes qualitative. It's that place where you have to use your judgment. And this is why, we in RPG, we talk a lot about trust, the importance of trust. This is where it's going to go. And for me, I wanted to relate fiat to this debate. It's not a debate, but let's put it that way. Let's bring it to the table. Like, can we see, it's a question, can we see the relationship between everybody around the table, GM and players being all players? You know what I mean? So GM is not different, just another player, just like other. And nobody has authority. It's everybody has responsibilities toward another. And so fiat, even though fiat is, I saw a very good definition by someone in the chat. Even though, fiat is an order. Wow, magic. Fiat is an order given by a person in authority. You know what I mean? Now, let's change that and say that fiat is a responsibility. Here's why it's interesting. Because now now that we understand that fiat is necessary in this hobby, no matter the game you play, there's going to be a certain level of fiat exerted by players and GM. If we don't want to be subjugated to a game master that controls the story and the experience and everything, and we want to have it more like a collaborative or a shared experience, then what's interesting is that we have a responsibility. So I know everybody knows that I'm going to have to use my judgment. So everybody looks at me like, better use it well. Do you know what I mean? So it's not an authority anymore; it's a responsibility. And so
I like where you're going with that, and because you say like fiat is going to be necessary in RPG, in all RPG, and in a sense, like fiat also, like one way that fiat can be looked at is like stuff done by decree, right? Like you decree that something is going to be done. Like people think about fiat. If they don't think about the car, they're going to think about fiat money, right? Just like talking about like money that is just money because like they said it was, right?
Yeah.
That's basically what it is. Not to go into that topic here.
Right.
But and in RPG, you kind of everything is kind of done by decree, right? Because like it's like things are right. The door is there because like we said it was there, right? Like everything is created by decree in a sense because like somebody out on the table, the GM, more often than not, probably, maybe sometimes somebody else, especially when you go into co-creation stuff, right? But somebody said something was so, and now it is so, right? And we have to, we have this agreement around the table that we're gonna run with it. So
it's a major responsibility. It's a major.
It is. Yes, and I like where you go with that as a responsibility, and when you talk about trust as well, right? Tyler was mentioning, right, the GM just like, or somebody was mentioning like the fiat just being like, oh, it is so because I said it was so, right? And sometimes there's good reason behind it. I think part of the trust is also assume that if the GM said something was so, there's probably good reason behind it, and you don't want to slow down the game by having the GM explain the reason behind it.
Yep.
So that's where the trust come in as well. You have to accept that if there's probably a reason to his madness, right? If he said something was so, and then you just run with it, and you just like, and then you add your own thing to the world and your contribution, like to your character. So yes, there's that's the role of the GM, right? The GM is there to control the world and control the NPCs.
Yeah, it's
Wait, just muted. My ear trumpet has been struck by lightning. For 5 Australian dollars, Mr. Max is going to be shilling Bitcoin after really against fiat money really soon. Well, it's no secret that's what I live off, right?
But yeah, it's interesting that a lot of people are mentioning this in the comments that fiat has a negative connotation, but the whole, if you take some of the definitions of fiat, which include something that's arbitrated, it's just, and people misinterpret, people use arbitrary to mean random. Well, no, it means one person just decided that thing. Yeah. Now it is so. But most people agree that the GM as a rules arbiter, yeah, that's what they are. So, but arbitration and fiat, they mean the same thing, but fiat has a negative connotation and arbitration is a more neutral term. So that's interesting. I think there's probably a misuse of terms there, right? I don't know where to go with that. I just thought that was interesting.
It is interesting. I don't know where to go with that either.
there is a thing, because when we talk about trust, when I'm just looking at
what Dyson was saying, like it's funny all the OSR type like rulings, not rules, but call ruling GM fiat, and suddenly it's bad, and that's exactly like what it would they would be the one that say like, well, the GM is the arbiter, and they would be like, that's a good term, right? Referee, arbiter, right? But then if you say like, well, he's gonna have like arbitrary decision, then oh no, it should just follow the chart and just.
Thanks for mentioning it.
That's exactly where I was going. So I think Dice Tales is quite on point. So why suddenly Fiat is bad? Fiat is everywhere in this movie. It's not bad. It's just fucking modus operandi. The way we go, we it's all Fiat. We create shit together. So, but what happened? I think the reason why people have an aversion, and I was very, back then I was very anti-Fiat. I was like, no, Fiat is very bad. But I think it's when we see the relationship as authoritarian. When we see the relationship as authoritarian, and we as a player, essentially as a player, we feel that the GM is robbing us from our agency, or is robbing us from something. He's too mean, or he's too harsh, or he's too, and this is where trust get out of the way. It's when you have an authoritarian relationship. If I have a responsibility relationship, I know the GM is responsible. When I'm a player, I can look at him and say, "You fuck up. You fuck up. You were responsible to create a good situation, or you were responsible to be fair, or whatever, to have good obstacles, or not to roll the dice that often, or not do the quantum over." But now I feel like you did, so you are responsible. But when you see it as authoritarian, so you feel that you cannot say anything. And so therefore the Fiat is kind of like evil. I don't know if you see what I mean.
Yeah, I see absolutely what you mean. I think it's very interesting because, like, it's also no secret that I'm a bit of an authoritarian in life, right? I'm like, I believe in authority. I'm not a libertarian at all. Like, quite the opposite. I'm a feudalist. Am I saying that right, Tyler?
Yeah.
And when you talk about the authority of the GM and the responsibility, for me, the bell that rings in my head is noblesse oblige. Right? If you're in this position of authority, it comes with responsibility, and that's something oftentimes people forget, because at some point, right, in the story, people decided that authority was bad, and every man should be like his own king and whatever, right? All this kind of bullshit. And I'm gonna make them libertarian mad. But in the process, there's something that there's some point that there was something that was taught to the people, like, that were meant to be the noble, that, okay, you have all those privilege and all those benefit from your birth, but it comes with all those responsibility. And at some point, like, people like this class has been usurped, and people that took their place were all about the privilege and forgot about their responsibility, because they didn't have like the noble soul, right, if you want. So I see a lot of parallel with that when you talk about this GMing thing, right? It's almost kind of like this American mindset, I would say, about like anti-authoritarian, right? What do you think, Tyler?
I don't know. I'm trying. Yeah, I'm the local libertarian and American, so it doesn't piss me off at all.
Which is fitting.
It's interesting you say that, because I think that's kind of flipped on its head in recent years, as most libertarians, lowercase or otherwise, in response to the, not getting into politics too much here, but you get, and this is analogous to, but without GM Fiat, who would build the roads effectively? Because
who would build the road?
Right, exactly. Because
is there a road there? Well,
right,
that's the GM.
Yeah,
there's a road.
Right, but that's with added liberty, people assume that it's like, well, but what about all the free shit we have right now? And it's like, well, it's your responsibility to get that if you have more personal freedom, or to just live without it, either or. But definitely, to take a whole half of of either political side, there's just some people that want free shit with none of the downsides, which is unattainable, obviously. But so either way, you're going to have to figure out whether or not it's, maybe we could bring in the co-creation thing here. whether or not it's up to the individual, the player, to foot the bill for coming up with stuff in the world. Somebody mentioned way earlier, I think like a minute before we started, on like player backstory and GM playing their family or something like that.
Yes.
And
Are you not?
it asked me if I wanted to log in. Then I get into the stream and I'm not logged in. I don't know why StreamYard hates me, but it does recently.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why either. I gave you like administrator, so you can
yeah,
you can highlight
and then,
those.
yeah, but or the alternative, which is, yeah, you have less. I'm dancing around introducing too many topics at once.
Yeah, all right.
You give up some player or character agency.
That was Arun, right? I wonder about
Yes,
gray area, like
yes.
family backstory. The GM should be able to say your big family crowd in to bid you farewell as you leave the farm, or if that's too deep, integrate all the player should determine what if they have family, as it would shape their entire worldview and priority. But surely family ought to be NPC and not large clan controlled by a PC, maybe.
Yeah, so and there you have really deep layers of Fiat. It's the player Fiat that they even decided that they have a big family. And then it becomes, again, arguably more. Now you have to decide session 0 who controls these characters. Yeah, the player made them up and they're intrinsically linked to the player's character. But do we really want to be jumping between, 7 different characters as one person?
No.
Well, that's the job of the GM. It's
And
probably
that's
only one person at the table should be doing that.
And I think it's fair, like to even co-creation, right? It's fair to create NPCs when it's convenient. We do it all the time, right? Like we like when it's convenient, not when it's convenient, when it's appropriate.
Yeah, I knew what you meant.
Used, right? Because like sometimes like in the traveler game, in the Far Traveler game we did, right? Like it was all the time because like I'm this head of security guy in the station. I'm in my command center. I just turn around to this guy, Johnson, and ask him something, and now this character is created on the spot, and the GM is just gonna, well, okay, now like, and the only thing we know is that his name is Johnson, and is somehow subordinate to me because I'm like, that's fit in my role of head of security, right? I would have some subordinate in the command center. There would be some people around, but the rest is up to the GM. His personality, his attitude.
That's super interesting, Max. Actually, because this is a good example of player Fiat. If you play in a 40 collaborative, storytelling, role playing, I don't know how you guys want to say it. What happens is that sometimes players going to create rooms. They're going to create geographical location. They're going to create because they need it now in what they want to do.
Yeah.
And as long as it fits, the coherence, the verisimilitude, and all the very good stuff that everybody educate at session 0. Sometimes they're going to create as well NPCs. But what's cool in your example is that you say that I created some kind of an employee, like he's a
subordinate.
A subordinate, and then I give it to the GM. It's kind of like I pass the ball. So what you do is you use your Fiat, and you take that Fiat as a ball, and you pass it to the GM, kind of thing. So the GM now can use this new NPC that is useful right now because it's useful for this what's happening. And it's very interesting because this is where it's becoming very cool playing RPG. For me, at least, is where is where I have Fiat, you have Fiat, but we trust each other that we're going to use it responsibly. And it's not authoritarian. It's just it has to make sense. So let's let's do that.
And for me, like this authoritarian aspect is very like you say that's where our playing RPG get to be fun. Like for me, I love that, and that the big reason where I'm like on the no prep team, right, is because like for me that's where I get to play a game, right? Like if you're trying to tell a story and you have all this prep done and stuff like that, you have to be more authoritarian. But then, are you still playing a game in a sense?
Or you're imposing something.
Or you're just there to tell a
imposing an
story,
effort.
right? Exactly.
Yeah.
You're imposing like, yeah, and they're just
And
along
that's
for the
it.
ride.
Yeah.
Like for me, like the make the oh, you throw me a curveball and now like I need to deal with that.
It's fun.
That's for me a big part of the fun. Yes.
The biggest part of the fun, at least for the people who like to play that. You know,
Mhm.
the people who are a little bit more control freak and stuff, they like that authoritarian approach. It's
Mhm.
like I am superior, you follow me, trust me, I have a good story, kind of thing, you know. And I know, and to be honest, I mean, I'm not very veteran in this hobby. I've been playing this for maybe, I don't know, 15 years, so it's not that long.
That's a long time. You can you're not the new guy anymore.
Okay, I'm not the new guy anymore. Okay, 15 years. Okay, I'm not the new guy anymore. But it's not 40 years.
The 40
Yeah.
years.
You know, it's not 40 years. And these guys, and what I see is that there are people who very, very like the authoritarian approach, where
Yeah.
I want to sit and I want to listen to your story and I want to be a part of it. It's a personality thing. And you know, for me, I do think it's a personality, maybe taste, you know. But so it's not about it being good or bad. It's just about a paradigm shift. You can shift it. You can play that hobby without an authoritarian dynamic. That's the idea I'd like to propose. You know?
Yeah, I think a lot of it too is not even people liking that way that they do it, but just not that's the way they see everyone do it, and so they assume, well, that must be the way it goes. Right? When you that's at least the position I was in when I started finding you know, the guys in this corner of the internet, Shauna, Max, Crispy, etc. Was, you know, guys saying things, and I was like, really? I've never seen anyone play a game like that. I've never, you know. And Shauna would always ask these rhetorical questions. Have you ever seen X? And I'm sitting there thinking, I don't know if I have. It's like players describe their attacks, and it's like, well, it's like for some reason a big deal when Matt Mercer asks a player once in a 4-hour session how they want to finish off an enemy. I'm like, but wait a minute, it's their character. Why aren't they just describing all of their attacks? Hang on, yeah, this is stupid. And it's not something I even realized because we're just in a total vacuum of that's the way everyone does it. Everyone just, the player rolls their dice because the GM told them to roll the dice. The GM then describes what the results of the dice are. The GM rolls dice to attack the player. The GM is again describing what the results of those dice are, and you just
even when the player makes an effort to describe his attack, oftentimes you're gonna see the GM is gonna take it over and re-describe it and put more flavor to it and stuff like that. And first, it's slow down the game, but also like, well, man, he's gonna stop trying if you always like retell everything, right? Like, what is it? Was this turn not cool enough for you? You have to make it like, you know. Like,
yeah.
But I have a good point. I'm gonna do devil advocate.
Mm.
I have a friend of mine, Ivan Mike. He's a YouTuber. He's a veteran role player. He's been playing for a long time. He's a very good role player. This guy, what he does is that he stays in character all the time. So he speaks as character all the time, and he do action and describe. So he never narrate third person. He's always, you know, first person. And for him, if he has to narrate the outcome of his successes, for example, which is a common thread in the 40,
Yep.
he feels like it doesn't make sense because in his head, the consequence, let's say in real life, that's his argument. In real life, when you do something, life is gonna give you the consequence. You don't know. You cannot narrate what's gonna happen. Life's gonna, you know, give it to you. Can you understand what I mean?
I see. Yeah.
Yeah. So for him, when he's in character, he needs the GM to kind of give him the consequences because he wants that realism kind of thing. If it makes sense.
But when it comes to the success, you can say that.
You know what I mean? It's a completely different thing.
Yep.
But it doesn't change the fact that he's a very good role player. So it's very.
Like I'm a very lax as GM, right? People like talk about, oh, you want to describe your success, you want to describe your failure, and say like, well, I don't care. Like, do both if you want. Like, if you have an idea, right? You made your role, you know, like, we agreed on the difficulty level, so you know it's a success or not, right? Do both. And if you draw a blank, if there's dead air, then I'll step in and
Yeah.
fill in, right?
Yeah.
But go ahead, right? And
Mhm.
for the success, you're trying to do something. Well, you succeeded. So do the thing, right? Describe the thing being done. It's
Yeah.
not like, like don't go overboard, right? Like you're trying to you're trying to break down a door and then like suddenly like, oh, a success, and then like you turn down the whole building, right? Like you by huffing and puffing, right? That'd be like
Sure.
going too far.
Mm.
But
It's funny. There are games. I don't know if you guys have read those games. Games that they give rules about narration. So they tell you like, if it's a success, the player starts the narration, the GM finishes it,
Yep.
and if it's a failure, the GM
Yep.
starts it. The player it's kind of
That's-
like the structure.
That's how I'm designing my game a little bit.
Me
Is
too.
is if and you can actually do it in either way. It kind of doesn't matter. It's really just up to preference as to whether or not you want success GM describe or failure player describe.
Yeah.
Whatever, whichever way you have it. And that way, that's why I say I kind of like rules guiding Fiat, right?
Yeah.
Where it can make you feel less bad as a player. Because I'm kind of in the same boat. I get what that player is saying when you feel like, I don't want to do something lame and like, I take damage in Traveler and I'm gonna split it across all of my stats so that I stay alive as long, even if I'm not actively trying to do that, I don't want to I don't want to like subconsciously do so, not handicap my character. So it's something that's kind of distracting while I'm playing because I'm like thinking about 3 or 4 layers deep, but that's me. Whereas if it's built into the game that no, you failed, so the GM gets to pick something bad for you. Oh, okay, there we go. Now we know from session 0, from when we pick the game, that's the way it's going to go. And you don't have to feel bad when you get to describe a thing. Well, you succeeded, so you're supposed to do something cool here. Yeah, it's
That's your thing.
Yep.
Yeah, in Bastard Sword, like in the combat mechanics, that's something I'm really focusing upon. Like I want because like it's supposed rolled, and I want the interaction to be very short because I like when things are punchy and go back and forth, right? So you both make your roll. The one with the most success got some hit he can spend, and he can say like, oh, I'm driving you off 1 step, and then I'm hitting you with my sword, and then he does his damage roll, and then the other player describe how he's affected by the damage, right? If did the armor block, was it a new injury, stuff like that. So like it's meant to have a lot of back and forth inside of that, right?
I have I hate to interrupt, but I had an example of this. I played in the game just last night for the first time in a while. We had some hiccups, but we had some cool moments where this Drake breathes this like acid cloud on us, and it's a reflex save, and the GM just says, reflex save, this is the DC, halves if not, just quick rattles it off, and then we describe what happens to us. I earlier knew what we were fighting because we had been tracking this thing for a couple days now, and I had cast an energy resistant spell on myself, so I describe as I step out of the way, and some of the acid just harmlessly splashes off my clothes. There you go. The GM was just sort of arbitrating mechanics there after he said, the thing breathed its acid. But all the players are describing how they're dodging out of the way. Because I've seen this happen before. Man, it would be a pain if the players just spit numbers back at the GM, and then the GM goes around and describes what like 4 or 5 different people are doing.
Yeah, no, that's a good way to do it. And also, like, there's one thing too, right? Like, about the why we're here together in this session, right? We're trying to have this cool experience, right? We're trying to have like cool stuff to happen, and we try to be immersed in that world. If you just go there with the mindset of winning, then you're always going to try to pull the odd in your favor, and then like it becomes a competition between like GM and player, which is never going to be a fair competition because the GM can always throw more shit at you, right? So that's why like oftentimes old school game some game try to put like very strict limits on the GM, stuff like that. But it's always arbitrary. Like the GM is like, in a sense, it's always like just like the GM can just ignore those and throw more shit if you want, right? And even cheat in a sense, right?
Mhm.
Fudging dice and stuff like that.
Yep.
Which I don't agree. But like, if we are all there together
Mhm.
to have this moment where the player feel like they were this character and that we were in this world, and then at the end, from the session, from the game, result a cool story, or maybe sometime a city one, if because there's a bit of randomness and stuff like that,
Yeah.
right? Then the goal doesn't become to win anymore. So sometimes you can, as a player, impose your consequence on yourself that is going to hinder you a little later down the road, but that's fine because it's going to hinder your character, but it's going to make the session so much more interesting, right? Your clothes now are partly dissolved. Well, now that's something you have to deal with.
Yeah.
Something you can bring back, something of consequence, like even minor, right? Just when you go
I
back
think
down.
that's something that people forget with arbitration in other games, where a referee in football, it is about winning or losing. It is about what and people will get.
But you don't compete
pissed.
against the referee in the football.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But people will still get pissed at the referee for making the wrong call, for making oh, that's that's bullshit. Roll the tape back. We did we need. And I think people end up playing like that in D&D. Rolling the tape back ends up being, oh, hold on, let me look it up. Let me look up if there's no rata there. What's the actual ruling on that? I don't know. What's that stat block? They have to know every little thing. They have to see if they're inside the line, or if their foot's on the line or over the line. Yeah. But if you take it as we're all on the same team, that's not it's not win or lose.
You see, that's a very good point. We're all in the same team.
Yeah.
For me, when there is an authority and a subordination, sometimes for some reason, I think, look, I don't want to be too academic, but let's say why we feel sometimes that an authority is against us.
Mm-hmm.
We can think about it as this authority is with us. We should work together. This authority is for us.
Let's not go too political again, but it's because like
do you know
for all of our life, the people ruling us have been against us.
That's why I don't want to become too political about it. So that's why. So I think that.
But yeah, in theory, the people in charge of you, right? The people in authority, they should work for you. Like it's when you're a child,
work for you. But
yeah, when you're a child, your parents in authority over you, right? They're there for your own good. They're there for your good.
Yeah.
And maybe that's more the model that we should have than the model of like the current state that we live on.
No, I understand, but that's why but the thing is that when you are the benevolent king, very good. So we are. Let's say we are in when we play an RPG session with 4 people, 5 people, don't want to max for yourself, I guess. So that's funny. When you play a game, you are 5 people, 4 people, most of the time. I mean, it's a small group, so it's possible to have a responsibility dynamic instead of an authoritarian dynamic. In society, it's very different,
Yeah.
Now,
it's like a family dynamic more than like a state dynamic, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, exactly. And so we give responsibility. So let's go back to let's say we are in a traditional setting like GM and players, because RPGs are very different. But let's say we are in that dynamic. The players give the GM some responsibility. You need to be fair. You need to do some good Fiat. You need to do all this stuff. You don't have to tell a story and all that. We all agree about that. But I mean, you have to do some stuff. You have to be fair, and you have to be consistent. For verisimilitude and stuff like that. And patriarch. And then when you are a player, you also have responsibility. So you have responsibility to be competent as well, to be proactive. But you also have some Fiat as well as a player, because when you decide to go left instead of going right, that's what it is. When you decide to flee a fight, and the GM thought that you would fight till the end, now he's fucked, and this is players' Fiat, and nobody talks about that. So we need to talk about that as well.
Well, they do talk about it, but they call it agency. For players,
Yeah,
it's agency.
that's
For
a
GM, it's
super
Fiat.
good point. Very
Yeah.
good point.
It's-
They call it agency. That's right.
I
That's super
think
right. Yeah.
I think what's happened here
Very
is
good.
that there are enough terrible GMs out there that it hasn't been pointed out that this is just a terrible GM. It feels like it's a broader thing where it's like, oh, surely it's a system-wide issue. It must be the Fiat itself that's the downside. It's like, no, I think it's just the vast majority of people use Fiat in totally the wrong way, both language-wise and the GMs are using it to do things like I had a player that was reluctant to join one of my games because their only experience with tabletops before that was, well, we played and one session the GM just rolls a d20 and says that many harpies show up and then attack us and then we died. And it's like, well, okay, that doesn't mean the GM shouldn't be controlling NPCs. It means there's a much more elegant way to do. That's just a shit way to do it, right? There, just like there's a trash way to play your characters, right? There's the murder hobo where you're effectively using your player Fiat to just wander off and do all sorts of nonsensical things, and yeah, that's a terrible way to do it. There's a good way to use it.
You're not fulfilling your player responsibility if you're doing the murder robo.
Right,
like,
exactly.
Your responsibility as a player is to portray a believable character, right? Like people that would be like, your character survived to this point in this world, right? So you must have some sort of like common sense, and he should be able to function in that world like a normal human, like a normal person to some extent, right? So act like it, basically.
Yeah, that's why I think that the responsibility paradigm, which is not from me, it's from Runeslinger. It's his idea. I think it's a very good idea. Maybe somebody else talked about it, I don't know, but he brought us to our conversation, and I was like, wow. Never heard about that before, because everybody think about subordinate. It's very hard. It's kind of like the society kind of, and also this hobby. The way it was written, it was always written like the game master, storyteller, the referee. The word, the choose, the word, the choose of word, the choice of words. It's always like there is someone organizing, orchestrating, arbitrating. When there is just a group together trying to have fun, it's a game, it's together. It's too bad. And what happens is that it becomes cultural. So people play that way for a long time. And then we teach newcomers, we teach it that. And so we keep on.
Yeah, and it also become like crystallized in two different way, right? In what we call like the 2D style, right? And I often say like the 2D style is kind of divided in two. One side is the story gamer, which are very like they're 2D as well, and the other side is like the board gamer, right? And in both those cases, they have this very authoritative GM. One for the sake of the story, and on the other side for just like this kind of like, well, I'm gonna decide everything, and it's a challenge, and you have to beat me, and kind of like this kind of a competitive kind of play, right? But I think both of them kind of miss the mark of what make the hobby special.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it comes from prior times where you were basically stuck with the group that you had. Even now, organizing internet games is kind of a mess. But way beforehand, it was 10 years ago, it was almost unthinkable that I'd be playing in games with a French Canadian and people all over the globe. And especially in the 70s, it was kind of, well, these are the people who are vaguely interested in playing an RPG, whatever that is, this thing we've just made. But they have no organizational skills. They're not committed to anything. So I have to put my foot down and I have to organize everything. I have to be and because occasionally you do have it on the other foot where a group really does just have terrible players. And that's not necessarily the murder hobo thing, which it can be, but it can be the things of just like, oh, yep, great, that time works for me. And then you show up and you're waiting and they're 30, 45 minutes late. And so that ends up with you putting your foot down a bit more.
Also like when at the beginning, right, where like when you have the internet and stuff like that, right, it was very like in bubble, right, like in your local bubble. That's how the game has been understood and played.
Yep.
And I think that's something like, and then Shona was talking about that. I think like I think the way that, and now that Simul G is there, can tell me what his impression of, oh, well, although you're somewhat new. Now I'm back to that 15 years, because like for me, like when we started playing, like the way we understood those games is not different than from what we're talking about today, right? In the way, but that's just how people would play them around that. But we had not only like we have this geographic isolation, we also have the linguistic isolation in the sense, and we have a different literary tradition and cultural tradition, stuff like that. So I think we just like took those games and understood them differently in a sense.
Oh yeah, they were written differently. The true OSR guys, the ones that are very true to the old school RPGs, and I mean that it's very hard to understand the rules, and the fact that they are hard to understand the way they were written. You can still find these PDF out there. You can try and read those rules if you ever tried.
Yeah, but we were reading them translated. We were reading them translated as well.
You need judgment. Yeah. We read in French. Yeah, we translate. Yeah, and you need judgment. You need judgment to understand them because it's so poorly written compared to a 2025 game that just came out. Super clear, super well organized. Graphic design. Super cool. You can learn the game well. But
and then if you go like read like French RPG, like from France, right?
Oh, man.
The way they do stuff is quite different from the American way as well.
Very.
They
the black
usually
eye. Do you guys know the black eye from Germany?
Dark Eye, yeah. From,
the dark eye, black eye.
I don't know him, but like Zunalor can tell us about it. It seems very autistic.
Oh man! Like I have a French translation here.
Yeah.
It's just impossible. It's just impossible.
Huh?
That's an interesting thing because, like, like if you think about the stereotype of the German, right? Like very like rigid and mathematical, like that, logical, and you could see that in their game. You think of the French, right? They're very like, you read a French book, right? There's gonna be a lot of words, not much happening, right? It's gonna be beautifully written with not much happening.
Yeah.
And I think that transpire, and I think like the cultural thing also transpire in the hobby.
And the dark eye.
I don't know about French RPG, right? Like Ole and stuff like they include some player Fiat in the rules, right? They're the one that come say, well, every start of the session, each player can come with a rumor that they heard about a fact that can or cannot be true, right? But like they encourage kind of co-creation in a sense.
Super good idea. That's a good idea, Max.
Yeah,
never heard that idea.
You know what also does that? Most of the Pathfinder adventure paths, weirdly, like it's one of those things where there's really popular games out there that if you dig deep enough and you read through them, you're like, that's a great idea. Why doesn't anybody who plays this game play it that way?
You know what I'm saying? Like,
because so much of it too, especially with like 5e and the common stuff going on. Yes, I had to get a drinking game out there. That's for the guys out there who keep saying I sound like I don't think I sound like Bob World Builder. I look a little bit like him, perhaps, but maybe I should start getting into my thicker accent. But no, seriously though, the problem isn't even the way the books are edited half the time, because that would be expecting that people even read the goddamn book.
Big expectation.
How many times have we seen big channels going, after 5 years, I just read the player's handbook? And it's like, what are you talking about? You've been making advice on this game and you haven't even read it? What?
Viceroy, if you or Viceroy, I don't know how you want to pronounce that. If you go look at the Crispy latest video, I believe he looked at the Bob's World Builder. Oh, you can look for Bob's World Builder on YouTube, but having the crispy layer on top of it make it better, in my opinion.
Despite the fact that you've never seen us both in the same place at the same time, I promise we're different people.
Yeah, and what Daryl was saying here, like Gary Gygax it more for a generation than the depth of education ever could. I
Well,
agree with that.
that's a low bar.
It is a very low bar.
There's
Yeah.
something to be said there with the prevalence of teachers in GMing positions too. This is something that we notice a lot just going through people's videos. If you stick with any of the D&D tubers channels for long enough, there's like an insanely, statistically unlikely chance where you just flip a coin and it's like they offhand mention, "Oh, when I'm teaching my class," and you're like, "Damn it, they're a
Yeah.
teacher too." Like, so of
Well,
course
that's the people that want to do. Well, you're teaching a martial art class.
right.
Same old G is a teacher.
Hmm.
I've taught in college for a session.
Yeah, but
And
most.
What did you taught, Max?
Yeah.
What did you taught in college?
Character rigging for a 3D animation.
Oh wow, nice. No, yeah, I think you told me that before. Yeah. I remember.
Zanara is calling me out.
what
Mr.
college?
Max, do you actually need the
What
5e
college?
players and book? Sorry?
What college did you do that?
It used to be called Campus Ubisoft, but it wasn't affiliated with Ubisoft anymore. So it was called, I think it was just like Set Up the Matan, but they have a campus in Montreal.
Ah, I see. So okay, I understand. It's like Ubisoft that kind of extended it.
Yeah, like Ubisoft. That's the school I went to, right?
Ubisoft is so big in Quebec. So it
Ubisoft used to pay like Ubisoft and Terre de Matan made some class together to train like video game artists and stuff like that. Yeah, Terre de Matan. Yeah, but it was all done in Montreal.
Yeah,
but they just needed like a college to be like the governing body,
hosting the thing. Yeah, I see. Cool.
But then like at some point Ubisoft retracted themselves, and Serre de Matan just kept doing it. So that's when I went in to cover for like one of my buddies that was teaching that class needed a session break, and he asked me to cover for him for the session. So that's why I went and do it. Good money.
Very cool. Very cool. I was curious. That's cool. So yeah. So I see and oh man, so many things we need to talk about.
Yeah. Let me just read that because I'm being called out. Like Zanara Simax, did you actually read the 5e players handbook from back to front now? We've been playing for 2 months since session 0. I have read the players handbook before we ever started, and I not only the players and books, I also read the GM guide and what's to be read in the monster manual as well.
5e is not bad. 5e is not bad in my opinion.
No, it's not.
5e is not bad. 5e is
there's some issue with it, but it's there's something that can be improved, but it's functional.
It's Tyler, functional. You can do a lot of things with it. It's kind of it's generic.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah. Tyler, you want to say something?
Oh, I wanted to say, you don't need to read these kinds of books even cover to cover because they're technical manuals. You're not really, they don't really flow like a novel or, something that's meant to be read cover to cover. Just open it, get the big picture, you like... if something's in a sidebar, it's probably telling you it's in a sidebar for a reason. Sorry, I can't speak my own language.
Nobody can.
But yeah, the reason I bring up the whole teacher thing is that, not as a random aside, but because many teachers, especially in martial arts, use it as a power dynamic. You go home from your shitty 9 to 5, but you get to teach a bunch of kids karate. You get to slam a bunch of people onto the mats. You get to feel like a big strong man. It's not that different a dynamic between most GMs and their tables. It's like, oh yeah,
man, Tyler, you're saying the truth. You're speaking the truth. So there's a lot of people who in this hobby, that's the thing as well. The problem with the authoritarian dynamic is that whenever you are in such a setup, let's say, for example, the GM is authoritarian over the player, which is a very traditional way of saying that. You're never, what's the word in English? You're never far away from a guy like that who
Mhm.
has been hit on his head by his own boss at work, and he
Mhm.
comes
Very
up to the school and he's like, I'm gonna use my authority now because I don't have it in my like.
Yep. Yep.
You're never far away from that.
Yep.
Yeah, no,
exactly.
I think that's a very interesting point you make there, because like I saw that in the powerlifting world as well with a lot of coach, right?
Mhm.
I was coaching too, but I would see a lot of people like they you know they thought it make themselves big. Like I coach and I had coach obviously,
Mhm.
right? And a lot of some people like were just like trying to make them the shit, and they wanted to be like your boss and say, man, I'm just like, you're paying me to coach you, or I'm doing it like sometimes I would do it pro bono because like I wanted to help the youth and stuff like that. But it's kind of like my public service.
Mhm.
But I see a lot of people like they use that as to bolster themselves
Mhm.
from a lack of power elsewhere. Maybe
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
interesting that you
That,
bring that.
and that is a, let's be fair and just very empathic or empathetic, or I don't know how to say that in English, but it's just, I mean, it's normal behavior. If
Mhm.
especially if it's written in the book, because there
Yeah,
are
yeah.
some book where it's black and white. So by doing that paradigm shift, responsibility versus authority,
Yep.
instead of authoritarian, it changes everything. But here's a topic I wanna
Oh.
make you grow when I say so.
No, but I was about to go on that. Like, can you hold your thought a bit?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Because like that's also something like you roll when I say so. Again, as a GM, I'm very relaxed on that. I say like, and I like when playing with people that have been GM themselves or that could be GM themselves, right? If they wanted to, and say like, you know when to roll, basically, like most of the time, right? And if you try to do something, like you can just make your roll,
Mhm.
and you don't have to tell me that you're rolling for that, but I'll get by the description of what you're trying to attempt,
Yep.
and then I can just say like success or failure or not or whatever, right? So I can educate like
Mhm.
like you can just make the roll, and even if
Yeah.
you roll like a 4, if I think like, well, you shouldn't have been needed to roll on that, I'll just say yeah, success, and then we can just move on. But then you can make your roll during the description and go with the flow, right? We don't need to interrupt. I don't need to say like, oh, make a roll, give me a roll for that. Sometimes I
Mhm.
will. If we're
Yeah.
on disagreement, like you thought you could just do something, but I say, you know what, make a roll, give me a roll, right? Just like, and that's all right. But
Pure Fiat.
yeah, player Fiat in independence too, right? It's like, oh, I'm trying to like I'm going on the podium and I'm starting, and then you make your roll as you say it because you want to make a rousing speech, right? And then you roll with whatever charisma or whatever, depending on the system you play, and then you can abdicate your own role and make your description like, oh, you roll like shit. And there's some system too that because like you roll against your skill or whatever,
Mhm.
right? So you would know
Mhm.
if you fail yourself, you don't need education from the GM.
Yep.
Then you can say like, I just go to the podium and I want to make a rousing speech, but I'm just there like in front of the microphone. And I'm just like tripping over my word and
Yep.
being uncomfortable, making
Mhm.
jokes that don't land, right? And there we go. We
Yep.
move on, right? And you contributed something. You made a role.
Mhm.
I didn't have to ask you. I didn't have to educate for you. You're a grown ass. You're a grown man, right? You're just
Right.
like,
You can, if you've played the game once, you can understand what a 1 on a scale from 1 to 20
Yeah.
means, right?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Avez-vous? No, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
That's so French. Sorry. Have you ever noticed that? Have you ever noticed that? Sorry about that. That the have you ever GM a game and a player asks for a roll? Is like, I want to roll this.
Mhm.
Have you ever encountered that experience as a
Mhm.
GM? And have you ever felt weird about that? Like, hey, I'm supposed to be the one that asks for the role. But there's nowhere kind of like some games it's written, but some games it's not. Like
That's true.
whoever is supposed to call the role.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I had some players at the table where they are so into it and they're like, I want to roll perception. or I want to
Oh,
roll.
yeah.
this.
Yep.
And I'm like, and I think that feeling that you get as a GM when you have a player out of nowhere asking to roll, and you have that feeling where, hey, wait a minute, I never asked for it. That's what I mean by
Yep.
authoritarian. It's like,
Yep.
so it's a paradigm. It's very weird. It changed your perspective.
We
And
see that we see that in actual play. Like if I'm understand what you're saying correctly, like sometimes the GM like no player, no character has taken any action, right?
Mhm.
GM was just like giving some lore dump, like doing or
Mhm.
reading a box text and stuff like that, and he's just gonna say like, everyone give me a perception roll.
Yep.
And it's like, wait, what? Nobody
Yep.
did anything. No character
Yeah,
did
yeah.
anything. Now they have to make a roll. It's like, what is that roll for, right? It's like,
For me, it feels backwards. Like that's the thing I've always said when it happens, where
Yeah.
it's like
Hmm?
just do the thing, do the thing, and then we'll see if we even need a roll, right? Because if somebody like spits at me, sometimes you'll also hear the like 22 stealth, and you're like, what's that? What? I guess I could kind of try to figure out what you're trying. No. Describe what you're doing first, and then give me the roll. So it's just kind of backwards. It's like a really simple tweak. Just describe what you're doing.
Yep.
Then tell me what the roll is.
But
I know.
like,
I know. It's very interesting.
which one is worse? Which one is worse? When a player asks to do a roll without saying what he's doing, right? Without describing what he's doing, or when the GM asks the player or players to do a roll when they're not acting, when they
They're
didn't.
not, yeah.
Like
I
see,
think
both
both
are kind of
are
fucking
bad.
weird.
Maybe it's just an intuition. But I think both are bad form. I think before you ask a roll, you need to introduce something. You need to introduce something before the roll. Asking for the roll, no matter what. If you're a player and you want to roll, introduce something before, and ask for the roll, even though it might be
act, do something, right?
Yeah.
Or just act.
Yeah.
And do it for the GM because you need trust. So
Yeah.
So it's a very weird thing. Maybe it's bad form. Maybe it's just a weird phenomenon.
You know what? Like when we're doing the last marathon, Tyler, which the next
7
one,
hours, guys. You guys are crazy.
Well, not me as much, but yeah.
Man, Max, I don't know how you do that. I don't know.
Well, I don't know why I do that.
It's not a matter of how, it's a matter of why.
But when we were doing like the last marathon, right, and we were watching this Mystic Art DM video, and he was saying like, oh, and to achieve this goal, the player has to take the study action on this object, right? And just like, and we're just like, what? Why do you say it like that? You just say like the player has to study this object, right? It's like, what do you have to say? Oh, they have to take the study action. It's like, that's so fucking mechanical. It's insane.
Yeah.
But everything he was saying would be like those extremely mechanical terms. And it's like,
well, it's like my last video was about this, where it's like if you tried to play Tekken or any fighting game like it was a like it was an RPG, you'd be saying, okay, I tap up on my keyboard to sidestep cancel, and then I'm -4. And it's like, no, that's not what's interesting. What's interesting is the characters moving in 3D space and attacking each other. It's like you're not saying like, okay, he blocks it, I'm +3. I use forward 4. It's a homing. It low crushes. I'm doing a flying jumping kick in the.
It's funny because like I've been playing like a fight in tight space, right? And I played a bit on stream on Monday, right? And it's like a melee like end-to-end combat kind of like a kind of card game, right? But all the card you have is like a long punch, back fist, roundhouse kick, or they all have name, right? And that's how you should describe to you when you're fighting, right? Have name and stuff like that. And I know like you're like being an EMA nerd, you probably like maybe like if you go like too
I'm not gonna throw a Stutzpal out in a game. I'm gonna describe what that attack looks like.
You could if you're playing with like EMA people that would speak to them, right? But but I think those descriptions that are like kind of like figurative, right? Instead of just saying
Mhm.
attack and stuff like that. Yeah,
Yeah,
you're supposed to. That's what you want to do, right?
Like the Dornhau, the wrathful strike. That's one that you could totally use.
I more down my opponent.
Yeah, more
Yeah. Which is something you can do in
Mhm.
Bastard Sword.
Mhm.
A murder stroke.
If you're playing the drinking game, it's something you can do in Pathfinder too.
Is it?
Yeah, it's a feat because of course it is. It's
Oh,
versatile weaponry, something like that. You're good at like shoving a
Yeah.
pommel in people's face. It's kind of cool. I was like, oh, I don't mind that. That's cool.
Pathfinder. I don't want to be off topic.
No, I
Pathfinder
didn't.
is the first game I ever played in an official RPG.
Mhm.
The first edition, and I remember how it was super crunchy, with the moving and the step back and striking and all that stuff. But the feat idea of character building kind of thing, it was super engaging. I remember how engaging it was. Like, okay, I want to have that feat. I want to have that feat. I'm gonna get that class, and that class gonna give me that feat.
Yep.
It's super. It gets very engaging, but when you get down at the table, that's where it doesn't work because it's so long between turns. I mean,
I find like it's engaging.
it's kind of
like
engaging in theory or
wrong way, right? It's like, I don't want to say in the wrong way because I can also like have I can also get into that, right? It's character build, right? It's a game in itself.
It's really fun to just sit and make Pathfinder characters and then never actually play the game.
Yeah, and but then also like sometimes you do want to play the game with those characters because you want to see like you made a character you think would be very effective, and now you want to test it, right? But then like it changed kind of like it put you in this kind of competitive kind of mindset,
right? But
to make my character to be like built or like developed based on who they are, what they went through life, and stuff like that, right?
But to roll that into Fiat, it is a game where you need to use Fiat in a way of logic, right? Like I have a section in my house rules document which are things like there's a feat which is pushed to the wall, which lets you, it's like what unless you have a feat, there's no disadvantage for having your back up against the wall trying to fight. No, it's just I'm gonna use, you have to use a lot of GM Fiat and player Fiat in the way of like you'll run into things of somebody wants to do something cool and they go, oh GM, could I like use my cleave feat to hit these two guys like kind of adjacent to each other in this way because the adjacency isn't perfect, and you're just like, yeah, obviously we're not playing a video game. We're not. It's not hard coded in. It's
there's also like this danger of like because there's a feat to do all kind of stuff. The idea that you cannot do that stuff if you don't have the feat.
Right, exactly. Or the idea that something really stupid about Pathfinder that I hate, which is the push action, like pushing, dragging people, combat maneuvers. It's way harder to push somebody off of a cliff. Like the DC goes up a lot, and there's no explanation for it. It's just a pure balancing thing. And it's like, well, it shows.
No, I think it makes sense.
It shows up so rarely that you'd be able to push somebody off a cliff that you should just be able to do it, right? It's
Arun says sometimes I can tell the difference between 4D and Starbucks barista roleplay. Presumably, you can RP entire game session when you don't do anything except make coffee and talk about things.
Nah, that's not true.
That's where Zonalar says.
I don't agree with that.
Yeah.
I don't agree with that comment. I don't know where it comes from. I don't know if it's a joke.
I think I don't disagree with that. That's interesting.
Okay. So for me, 4D roleplay, it's not about mundane, profane stuff that you do every day. It's just about, as a player, taking control as well, and sharing that control or sharing that imaginative space with the GM together, almost like a sport where you can throw at each other, fiat and imagination ideas, creating stuff on the fly. So it's not about, hey, I want to role play the fact that I'm grounding my coffee,
No.
or I want to role play the fact that I'm gonna buy stuff and haggle the thing in the store. It's not about that necessarily. You can do that if you want to, but it doesn't have to be that. It's just that if I'm in a bar, there's a fight, I grab a bottle and I smash it on his head. I just want to be able to do that, and it makes sense. And
even if, like,
it's
for me,
not
like,
about,
the important part for me, like in a session, like, or in a game, there need to be some conflict.
Mhm.
There need to be some drama in some way, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't need to be a fight necessarily,
Mhm.
but you can have
Yeah.
those conversation, right? You can have those
Yeah.
conversations that are super tense,
Mhm.
and that you have to, you have, like, it can just be talk, right? And role
Yeah.
play talk and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But there's this tension, and you know
Mhm.
that if you don't say the right thing, and if you don't do don't do the right move and don't play your
Yeah.
card right,
Yeah.
a fight can break out.
Could be,
And it's probably a fight that you don't want to get because, like,
Yeah.
maybe you're
Yeah,
outnumbered, but now
and
you're
that's
just there, and
But
it's just gonna be
it's
talk.
not about I'm gonna take my shower and I'm
No,
gonna roll
exactly.
through
right.
take my shower.
That's the big difference there, right? Where those sort of what at least I presume, Arun, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm making a presumption here, though. When I say the Starbucks barista game, because of course I have role played in Seattle before, and yeah, you're not wrong about the state of the state of the hobby up there. There's no threats, right? Whereas you could be 40 role playing in a game where you're running a local coffee shop, and then the health inspector's coming in, and there's big businesses down the street that are trying to buy you out, and there's a lot of conflict that's going on, and maybe outside of the coffee shop, other life stuff's going on. You're having trouble keeping employees, and there could be an interesting thing to play there.
Yeah.
Not everything has to be
Like,
That's for sure. That's for sure.
Like in the Ryzen game, there've been like session where there's no fight, but at some point we're getting to this negotiation with somebody, and at any moment somebody can get shot.
Mhm.
But it doesn't happen, right? And then, like, there's like, we're talking to this guy, and is this guy gonna be an ally or is he gonna be an enemy, right?
Mhm.
We're on the edge. That's super tense, and
Mhm.
for me it's super interesting to role play. Like, you're in that situation, right? Sometimes it's more engaging than just like fighting, because now, like, I'm okay, I need to play that cool. I need to play, like, I need to do something, and then the GM has to educate my reaction, and I don't want to be a pushover, I don't want to appear weak, but I don't want to come on too strong, right? This tension is so interesting to me, right?
Yeah,
Like,
I think the first contact with a group of NPCs, or a group of, like, even monsters, creatures that you've never seen before, where the player characters are kind of feeling things out, trying to be like, are they friendly? Do they even speak the same language as we do? That tension can almost be more interesting than the combat itself if it does break out. Trying to play through that sort of thing, and it can just end up being a conversation. But that conversation was really, you end up with the hands on swords, or on at holsters, ready to, like, I don't know if you're friendly, I don't know if we're friendly, what's going on here. Those are great scenes.
Yeah.
That really hear it.
Yeah. He said at the end of Braveheart, when Robert Bruce tries to is it that would be like not THE. It's not the Bruce, it's DE Bruce. I believe.
Dialectal.
Well, it's like it's from Bruce, right? The Bruce.
Yeah.
Tries to give an inspiring speech to rally the troop. Does the player skill matter or the character stat?
That player Fiat.
There you go.
That's an interesting
I
one.
think it's part of it. Actually,
Let's talk about that. I think as a GM, I don't want to penalize players that are not good at talking, right? So I do want to have character stat matter. So if you want to make a speech, that's the way I do it, and you can tell me what you think about that. If you want to make a speech, right, I like when you role play it, but you make your role, right? And if you roll well, even if your role play kind of is not great, because even if your speech you're doing is not exceptional, you rolled well, we are gonna pretend it was, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
We know
Okay.
we need to have a bit of buy-in too, right?
Oh
Yeah,
la la. Okay. All right. Let's talk about that.
Yep.
That's a whole very very old topic in the RPG brigade. We player skills versus
Yes.
skills exponent.
Mhm.
So it's very interesting because there was some argument I remember where people were like, okay, so if you don't know shit about chemistry, don't play a scientist. Some
I
people
don't
were
agree with that.
really believing in that.
Yeah.
I understand that it's conflictual. And I understand your perspective, Max. Like, okay, so there's a little bit of buy-in. So let's say, for example, I want to play a scientist. I don't know shit about technobabble or science babble. So I have high stats in science and chemistry and physics. And I just, I role play and I kind of like create kind of bullshit stuff that makes no sense. And I don't have much idea neither. So it's boring. Here's what's happening. It's happening at the table that they're very similitude now. Your responsibility as a player, let's keep it to that paradigm. Your
Yes.
responsibility as a player now doesn't make sense anymore because your techno babble, your science babble is not as high as your stat.
Yes.
So you know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
it's interesting. I mean, I think it's a matter of taste personally. I really don't mind. Personally, it's not gonna, it's not gonna fuck up my
Yeah.
experience. But I think it is in the terms of responsibility, it's interesting to talk about it.
Like what Daryl say, and what Uriah Grant Edward was saying, just watch some Breaking Bad. Like I think like there's when you as a player you have some responsibility to get ready for your character. You want to play scientist,
Yeah. You need
like go read your chemistry book, but like have some terms that you can throw around. Like,
Running table.
like like you just mentioned me being a human instructor. I'm not going to throw out all of that that babble out there, but if I have a player that's playing a a character that's supposed to be an experienced warrior, and at the session 0 we've said it's going to be fairly grounded, even barring that, if 30 minutes into the session, every attack you do is I attack. Okay, yeah, that's not enough. I need more than that, right? I'm going to presume, okay, maybe you've never been to a HEMA class, you've never been to any martial arts class.
you never watch a sword
But
fighting
I think
movie.
you've seen a sword fighting movie before, right? So there is a line there, right? Because I have had I kind of get part of it where you will have what's the word for it? You'll have players that try to play characters and then expect the GM to do expect the GM to baby you through everything, right? I played a game, ran a game, I should say, but I was the GM in it a long time ago, where player wants to play a kineticist. I don't remember anything else about their character because they were a terrible player and I didn't vet them very well. But I go through all the stuff. This is what you do. And every single time they need to be explained how to do their kinetic blast, which is their main class feature. It's a thing they do every single, pretty much every time there's combat. And if you're not describing your attacks and you're playing one of these classes like the 5e Warlock that's just throwing out, Eldritch Blast, Eldritch Blast, Eldritch Blast, you need to be able to describe it. So even worse that you can't, that you can't remember the rules to it. But on top of it, if you're not describing what it is you're doing, then oh man, dude, why are you here? Are you playing a character? Or are you to be blunt, right?
Oh man, why are you here?
Good night, Dave, by the way.
Yeah.
But
See you, Dave.
like what Daryl was saying, like everyone role play like that was a genius move, right? Like yes, that's basically what I would say, right? It's like is the player buy-in and the player has a responsibility to try not to be a moron and try to make it something believable and stuff like that. So I have some terms you can throw around. You're playing a neuroscientist, like I have some kind of like, why would you do that? Somebody wrote that in chat. You're playing like an engineer, right?
Semantic.
Learn an engineer term of two, right?
No, semantic field.
Yes, exactly.
Like, Neuro Bible, science Bible.
Yes, and make something like generic enough that like people can like roll, like can pretend like what you said, like, and like same thing with the knowledge check, right?
Mhm.
You roll this knowledge check and you roll well, just make up something, and then that's if you roll well,
Mhm.
it means you're correct, and
You
now
see,
this is part of the world.
this is I don't know if it's if it can fit in the Fiat category, but
Yeah,
a
it does.
pure imagination.
Yes.
We don't talk about imagination enough in this hobby, in the conversation about this hobby, because imagination is so abstract. I mean, I don't want to be academic, but in psychology, in philosophy, in I don't know what anything about the mind, in neuroscience, nobody fucking care about imagination. Nobody talks about it. It's very weird. It's very hard to talk about that. It's a thing that is so subjective, that is so artistic. Art, it's imagination. So it's nobody in a logical, empirical, academical, perspective. It's kind of hard to grasp. So
Yeah.
people tend to shy away from it. So it becomes that thing where we use it all the time. We use
Those
it.
are a imagination-based game, right? Just like it's
It's imagination. So
cornerstone.
it's the cornerstone. So
Mhm.
there's a lot about that. Is about imagination,
Mhm.
and Fiat is rooted in that, especially in this hobby. And so
Well, Fiat is like, and the responsibility, it's also like trying to sync up our imagination, right? Imagination is something very
Yeah,
personal,
yeah.
and not like
exactly,
this weird thing that we're trying to
yeah,
make our imagination work in tandem or like in as a group, right? As a
in sync.
Well-
The trust is about your imagine. I trust your imagination. I trust you and the way you're gonna use your imagination to not go too much or too little. I want you to be just enough. I want you to be constant. I want you to feed my verisimilitude. I want
Yeah.
you to create an aesthetic that match mine.
Yeah.
That's why we need that fucking social contract, and that's
Yeah.
why we need to let Fiat express itself. But at the same time, that's why. I mean, that's why we don't need authority. We need responsibility. I think it's very interesting conversation, man.
Yeah.
Tyler, when you say earlier that player agency is it's just really player Fiat.
Yeah.
That was very cool, man. Because I don't know, for some reason people started to call it player agency,
Mhm.
but if we call it Fiat,
Mhm.
we put it on a level of a responsibility.
Yeah.
It's like, hey,
Yeah. Yeah.
don't fuck around, man. Don't fuck around with that thing that you do. Don't
Yeah.
fuck around with that thing that you do as a fellow player, because we have rules here, and you need to fill the gap.
There's something like I've been saying for a while now. Like, it's like the number one job of a GM is to preserve the verisimilitude of the world.
Mhm.
That's
huge.
a responsibility, right? That's where you're there as a GM. You're there to present like a consistent and believable world, right?
And as player as well.
And as the player is like to preserve to present like a consistent character that is believable as well.
Yeah, yeah. And I wanted to. This was ancient. This was literally an hour ago, but I remembered it. Which was, Viceroy said that you started the comment, but I don't think we ever talked about it, unless I have short-term memory
Okay,
loss.
yeah, I can put it in because I started.
Yeah. What would be a way to bring it back if a player did go overboard with a success or undermined a failure? Because we're back on the topic of player agency just being Fiat and GM Fiat just being GM agency, I suppose, vice versa. Because the GM we've gotten to is just supposed to be the arbiter of verisimilitude. Yeah, as Zonalar says, you're allowed to believe the world is real, at least in its context and its confines. It's grounded, as I'm prone to say.
Zonalar is fucking
right,
great, man. This guy is so on point every time, and he brings humor with it.
Well, thank you. Don't blow my ego up too much,
I'm sorry, Tyler.
But like Max's earlier example, you're in a bar fight and he just picks up a bottle. Well, the GM never said there was a bottle there. If for some reason it's really important that Max doesn't have that bottle to hand, you can say something like, your hand just sort of scrapes across the ground and the bottle is like 5 feet away. So you haven't made the player or the character look like an idiot. Like, there's no bottle here. What are you talking about? But you've altered the state.
Yeah.
You could say like, oh, when you do that, or however you push
There
the
would need to
bottle
be a
away.
good reason for in a
Right,
bar
right.
not to have bottle around.
Yeah,
but
I'm just using this specific example. I
Yeah.
wouldn't do this, but like if there's some crazy example that
Yeah.
maybe the other guy picks it up before you and there's a roll off, there
Yeah.
becomes a roll where the player was just trying to say, oh, I just pick up the bottle. Well, now there's two people scrambling for the same bottle. Maybe.
Like, oh, I go over the fireplace and I pick up the rifle that's there,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Well, the rifle can be unloaded,
Yep.
can be decommissioned,
Or
can
the
be,
board can
like,
be shot out and it's totally, you won't
Well,
be
that's-
hitting anything
yeah.
probably, but
Yeah, exactly. This is what we call
Yeah.
passing the ball. The
Mhm.
player says, I go over the fire
Yeah,
pit,
it's decorative.
fire place. I grab the rifle, and the GM jump the gun and say, "Hey, sorry
Yep.
for the pun." And jump the gun and say, "Hey, you grab the gun." And you notice that the gun is lack an important part. Kind of
Yeah,
thing.
like
it's
just
just
Mr. Word talk about like Chekhov decorative's gun, right? Like there's a term I've made up like a while ago.
Yeah.
That was the Schrödinger Chekhov's gun.
Yeah, that was the stream we did. Yeah.
Yeah, in RPG, like like the Chekhov's gun, like it's in writing. If you say there's a gun somewhere, the gun is gonna be used at some point, or if you present like something, it's gonna be used at some point. But in RPG, it could or it couldn't because you don't know, because you don't have a story pre-written, right? But that's the thing, right? Now, like there's like maybe in that case the gun might not have been introduced, but you describe the scene that it makes sense for a rifle to be on over the fireplace, right? Because that's in that setting, that's what people do, right? Just like I don't know if you do have one over your fireplace. I hope you do.
I don't have
You have a fireplace.
I don't have a fireplace, but I do have several
But,
rifles.
that's
So
but then again, you can always, like, if the player decide, like, say that, well, I go over the fireplace, I grab the rifle, there's nothing down. Like, it's first time the rifle is mentioned, but it doesn't break anything in the immersion, right? It makes sense that it's there.
Yep.
But it might not be a function, like, and then, like, but that still advance the plot, because now, like, this guy escalated by grabbing a rifle. He didn't know the rifle was decommissioned, and now he's pointing the rifle at somebody that might know that the rifle doesn't work, right? Or might know that the rifle is not loaded and stuff like that, right? But it's still advanced the scene in some way. It's still like there's an escalation there, so it's still interesting. That so this Chekhov thing, right? This gun now is being used, but not necessarily efficiently, right? Just like you just drive the plot forward. So
there you go, and this is what it's fun with the. Now let's talk about the 40, but. It's this idea when you're a player in the gym, you pass the ball. Like, hey, I create that gun now. Is it loaded? Yeah, maybe it's gonna be. If you let me go about it, I'm gonna shoot that guy with it. And the gym can go, take the gun, and it just doesn't shoot. There's something about it.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's funny, but now I have a gun. I can hit with it and do stuff with it. No,
you could try to fix it,
And it's imagination, pure imagination.
Yeah.
And also not just imagination, but improvisation. And that's another thing. I mean, it's an whole other topic. But in Fiat, improvisation is kind of part of it as well.
Yes.
But when you improv, you create stuff out of nowhere. Major Fiat activity right there. It's just okay, I'm gonna improv. I'm gonna have to react. It's linked together. Improvisation and Fiat is kind of linked together, especially when you are creating stuff. Let's say you talk in character. It's exactly what you're doing. Somebody who's good with the babble, charisma as a player, is gonna bring that to his character. That influence the scene.
And sometimes also it can if you're a big mouth and you like to talk a lot and stuff like that, it can be hard to have play a silent character as well. It's also a challenge sometimes, especially sometimes I like playing a character that's gonna be like a not the leader, not the guy with a plan, stuff like that.
Mhm.
So I have to force myself to shut up sometimes,
Mhm.
which you can imagine how hard it is for me.
Right.
I don't have to imagine. I'm in the same boat.
Yeah, and what's another say? Like flexing our imagination. It's like a muscle. Using it is practice, and practice
Mhm.
improve using it. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, and
That's
if
a big
you
part of the game.
if you find a situation where you role play kind of awkwardly and you're like, you pick up a flintlock and you're like, I don't, the thingy on there, and it's like, and then after the session you can go, what is that thing? Yeah, and maybe you end up learning more. It's a frizzen. Okay, yeah, it's like I
So
need
what?
a frizzen.
What's a frizzen?
It's the little strike plate where you have the guy that holds the flint and then the pan powder in it.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't know that the name of that specific part.
Yeah.
You see, and one thing that is fascinating with that is just we flintlocky part that we in this hobby we tend to kind of forget about that. We tend to forget about that very subjective part of the hobby. This hobby is so intimate. Yeah, I mean, okay, when we meet somebody who's played that hobby for 40 years and they play with the same fucking childhood friends in that
Yeah.
basement for 40 years, you're gonna meet a very rigid person, played a certain way, and he's gonna bring that every time to the table, even though is a brand new table, And if you play with someone who never played before, you can do whatever you want with it. You can teach them kind of thing to be a certain way. I experienced that in my own life, and I had a lot of fun with that because I created a group that played the way I like. It was 4 people never played. I taught them the way I like, and we had a lot of fun. And then eventually, I played with different people, and I saw all kind of stuff. And it's a very I don't know how to say that. It's a very alive hobby. Like it's kind of like an organism. When you meet together, you play. Session 0, social contract. You create a living thing. You create a system. Here's how we're gonna do things. Here's how much you can do it. Here's the limits of the stuff that we're gonna do. And then when you actually give it into it, it creates an experience. And so Fiat is so huge. I mean,
Yeah,
it's so little in the books.
Yeah.
It's very weird.
because it is in a sense a creative hobby, right? It is like you're like you're coming to the table and like we have this game and it is a game. It's a role-playing game. It is a game.
It's in the name.
Yeah, did the meme, but it is a game. But it's also a creative activity. We're there to like this session, like the story that come out from it is something new that didn't exist, right? We're there, like when we talk about the imagination stuff like that, like we're there to put stuff into like it's just not like it's a very different activity that if we go play bowling, right? Or if we play even HeroQuest, right? If we play HeroQuest, we're gonna have like a story that emerged from the result of the session, right? But it's very much a board game with rules and stuff like that, right? And you follow, and like even though there's also like this kind of a GM, I guess, but it's just there to move the monster by the rules and stuff like that. So it's not the same, right? You're not gonna have like this creation and the rejection and stuff like that. So it's very different, albeit in many things. And it's like most game ignore that aspect, ignore that fact that it's a weird hobby. It's
a weird hobby. One thing that is so weird for me, and I mentioned it earlier, and I kind of want to put some emphasis on that, is just the fact that that simple fact that you can take 5e, the generation 5e, and have the worst session of your life with a certain group, and take the same fucking game and the same fucking character and have the best session of your life with another. If we can understand that, if we can wrap our head around that, we can understand what Fiat is, the importance of trust, and in the difference between authority and responsibility as well. I mean, how can you imagine? Let's wrap it the other way around. Let's make that reasoning the other way around. How is it possible that the same game and the same character played with different people can be the worst, the best session? It's kind of like huge. It's huge, and it's a fact. So when I hear people say this game is bad, this game is better, like, it's not about that. It's very about the way you do it. It's very about the way you do it. It's not about the game. The game is gonna be used to do a certain thing. If you play Twilight 2000, you're not playing Burning Wheel and you're not playing fucking Fiasco. They're all RPGs and they do super very different things.
Oh, is that what we're
so it's very about the way you do it. It's very about that. Very about the Fiat.
Wake her up.
Dude, I couldn't.
That's
That's impressive because my mic is pointed this way.
Yeah.
And the dog is
Oh.
over there. She must be really loud. Yeah, I mean,
I was wondering what noise was.
she
but,
snores like an old Dory. She barely opened her eyes, so I'll just mute my mouth.
The question there about player responsibility.
That's
Do
a
players
good.
have the responsibility to play a character that create balance, party, fighter, rogue. I'd say no.
I'd say no, but that's a very taste thing.
Yeah.
For me, it's a taste thing. I would very let's say I would have a lot of fun with like a bunch of magic users and rogues, no fighter, no fucking tank, no
It's
nothing.
a taste thing. I think it's also like campaign dependent, because if you're like
Independent.
if you're a group of professionals going for a job, right? Maybe when you put the party together, you hire the fighter and hire a rogue and hire cleric and stuff like that, right? So there could be this thing, right? Depending on the world, the setting and stuff like that, depending on how the party got formed. So it's something to discuss in session 0. If you're just like a ragtag people, a group of people that end up together for some reason, you're in a ship crossing somewhere, all kind of random people, and then like something happened that push you to work together, then there's not going to be balance. A team that has been specifically composed for a job, they might be like balance might be more but it's an in-world kind of thing. It's not like out of that's my point on balance. If it makes sense in world, if it's balanced in character, if you want, then I'm fine with it. If it's out of character, then
and also Zonolar idea with the balanced party is very D&D based, because he mentioned in his example like rogue and fighter and thief and magic user. But I have a game very nice. It's called Ars Magica. It's just a bunch of magic users. It's just a bunch of magic users in the tower, kind of like just doing spells. It's not about that, It's very.
But you have to play in Ars Magica, which is interesting because every player has a multiple character, and some of them are going to be fighter, and some of them are going to be like support character of different sort. And then like when one magic user go out, he goes with the character that he needs for this job, right?
Yeah.
In Ars Magica, I never wanted to play the magic user. I was always much more interested in the support character. More interesting to me. But also I have something against magic users. What?
Yeah. That's interesting. That's interesting. Yeah.
And like when I did my video last week, I guess, about the GM shouldn't run the game, I think that's very linked to what we're talking about here today, about the GM Fiat, right? And the GM responsibility. I was on the Friday, I was on the Legend of Midstream, And Max Liao called me out on that, like, so he didn't watch the video, but he said, like, oh, he's doing horrible videos saying the GM shouldn't run the game, right? Because he's kind of like this kind of more control-y kind of GM, right? Control freak kind of GM. But what I was saying is that, like, the GM doesn't run the game; he runs the world and the NPCs. But the player run their character, and that's a big part of like what's gonna happen in the game, right? So I want to break with this tradition of like the GM running the game, right? Being like the all controlling, like being the god of what's happening,
And
right?
it saves you a lot of stress when you do that too. When you have the hell, it's annoying when video games do it. When Bethesda has, this is relevant. The Oblivion remaster just came out. When Bethesda started doing that, it's real inconvenient that players can just kill whoever they want. So we'll just make these important characters unkillable. It's like, now you're having to sweat and you're having to jump through hoops and find like, oh no, my players they didn't actually like my super important NPC and they're gonna kill him. And you're now that's in my opinion one of the big ways that you get GM burnout is when you're having to think 50 Fiat layers deep of how you're gonna 4D chess it, and not 4D in our way, but make it
I guess what you mean, right? It's like you have to do like this decision tree of like, oh, what the player are gonna do, right? Oh, I'm gonna present this, and I know Bill, and he might do this thing, and he might see that way, but John might see this thing in this way. So now you have to do all this decision tree and try to pad and like, yeah, that's fucking insane. Don't do that to yourself.
Yeah.
Like, you're not playing a game; you're trying to play your player, basically, right?
Yep.
That's a good perspective. Yeah, to say it actually.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's so.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think this is.
So you say your thought?
Man, I was reading it and it disappeared.
Oh, yeah. When was the last time you played in an unbalanced party? I think this is a consequence of playing with other people, and somebody feels uncomfortable that the party is missing a tank or either.
This is a D&D culture. This is very D&D culture.
I agree with that. I think it's bad D&D culture too, because unless you have a huge table, it's just not going to be possible to cover.
This is why I can never run all wizard party. Yeah, this is D&D culture. It just depends on the game.
And just throw the premise out there, like all wizard is a bad idea because nobody wants to play wizard. No.
No, but I mean, even I would use D&D 5 and I would say all wizard party and I would create a campaign around that. I mean, it's doable. It's doable. It's not going to be that epic. It's going to be a little bit more mundane. It's going to be a little bit more. I mean, you want to. It's always about Fiat. Is that
in the Fiat, in the response? Is that in the authority of the GM? When you do the session 0, you say like, "This is the game I want to run." Are you in?
I want to run around all wizard party. I'm not gonna bring you fucking 10,000 kobold to fight. I'm just gonna, it's gonna be mundane. It's gonna be research in the library. It's gonna be talking about stuff, and then once in a while there's gonna be some action. And there's gonna be some spell, and, but very rarely because they are not fighters.
Yeah, all cleric party.
Yeah,
There you go.
Yeah. So that's why I think Fiat is a good conversation because it brings in perspective a lot of stuff.
Yeah. But that's what I want to talk about now, right? Unless you have something else you want to discuss,
go ahead.
In session 0, how much GM authority and GM Fiat and stuff like that? Like, is that the time when you can put your foot down and say, "This is the game I want to run. Like, this is the game I want to. This is one of the game I want to present." Right? Are you in? Are you out?
Man, I don't agree with that, Max. I would say
no. I'm asking. I don't agree with that.
Oh, okay. No. Me, personally, in my perspective, is that the game we want to play?
Yeah.
Not the game I want to run. The game we want to play. And everybody together ask that question.
There's sometimes I have a premise I want to explore, right? And I'm gonna propose that to my player and say I was thinking of this game. I think it's be interesting. What do you think of that? Right? Are you in? Are you out? And then we're gonna finagle the detail together, I don't want to come with a fully formed idea. I come with like an idea of an idea, kind of, right? Sometimes that happen, and sometimes it's just like, okay, what we're doing next,
Mhm.
and what kind of setting are you interested? What kind of system you want to play? What you want to do? What kind of like you have any idea you want to? Oh, we haven't done a western in a while or
Yeah.
ever.
Yeah.
So let's do that, right? Just like, all
Or
right, fine.
yeah, or sometimes a player just comes up with a character kind of in a vacuum, or maybe in a pre-established setting, and it's like, I don't know, I have a character I want to play, but that's it. You don't know. And then we work back and forth. We're like, okay, well, then we need some goals, we need some antagonists, we need, let's work this out, and then boom, you're there. You're playing a game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and oh fuck, I lost my train of thought. Sorry.
You want to answer some of these questions? Because Stochastic Agency has a question.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
Krishna.
Brian. Hey, that's Brian. Hey, hey, what's up,
Oh.
Brian? It's so good. Brian is the guy I had this conversation with over Messenger.
Oh,
So I'm
nice seeing
very-
you.
Oh,
Yeah. So
Yeah.
how does the responsibility not default to an authority and the use of Fiat when the group cannot come to an agreement?
That's interesting. When the group cannot come up to an agreement, I think the agreement needs to be made before the session start, right?
mhm.
Like they need, like when I start, they need to be buy-in, right? We all need to be on the same page of what we're trying to do here, right? And
Okay, when
sometimes-
there's no agreement,
Yeah.
when for me, sorry, Max. For me, when there's no agreement, we need to get to an agreement. So we keep on talking.
Like
Well, that
Yeah.
would be about that. We eventually will come to an agreement.
for me,
When
like
we-
because for me, like preserving the flow of the
Session
game.
zero.
Sorry.
I think it's not about session zero though. When he talks about is in a situation. Let's say
In
you are
the situation,
playing,
right?
yeah, you are playing and people are not agreeing on something. It's like
For me, the preserving the flow of the game is so important, right?
Mhm.
And that's something I'm gonna stress in session zero. Not
Yeah.
now, because I'm playing with people that I regularly play with, and we all on the same page on those things, right?
Right.
But preserving the flow of the game is so important that even if a call is made that you disagree with,
Mhm.
you know, just run with it during the session, and you'll see, right? In the end, it might come to something cool, and it might be a little bit bitter. It might have a bit of a bitter taste in the moment. Just run with it. Maybe it's gonna go. Maybe the aftertaste is gonna be pretty good, right? Maybe like afterward, like when things settle down and things get resolved, you say, "Oh, okay, you know what? In the end, it was a good call, right?" Like have some trust and run with it. And if you're at the end of the session, we always keep some time to discuss the thing that we
Mhm.
got a bit like in the last session we played. It's been a while since we played my channel. The last session we played was the Harvest, right? Great example for that. I should have brought that before, right? Great example for player Fiat and GM Fiat and authority and responsibility, right? At some point, there's like at the start of the game, right? My horse we started the game with my horse breaking a leg, and then I kill it because that's what you do with horse in medieval time, right? It's a low fantasy setting, right? Whole nag, break a leg. I'm gonna kill it, and I want to save the meat as much as I can, whatever, right? Just like, and at some point we were butchering the horse, and Crispy like exactly demon baby, demon baby, and Crispy like talk about like he's digging for some organ in the horse, and he said like, what is that? That shouldn't be here, and he's being pretty vague about it, right? And he's giving a chance. He's throwing a ball to the GM to say what's weird about that horse. Crispy is just saying like something is weird about the horse, and Phil doesn't say anything. Doesn't fill in that blank. So Crispy push, and in the end, say something, right? And he say like, "What is your horse pregnant? What is that? That doesn't seem like a like." And and then something weird's come out of it. And this is the demon baby, right? Like there's something weird in the horse that we couldn't identify. But that was like the player introducing something, but he gave, in my opinion, like Phil felt like Crispy introduced something too soon in the game when it wasn't his turn to do, right? That he felt like Crispy stepped, and I wish they were there to tell the story, because like that's them, right? Just like, but from what I understood, Phil felt like Crispy like overstepped his bound, right? But from what I seen as a third party observer, is that Crispy left a lot of room for Phil to say, "Oh, there's a stone indoors," or there's something like, something mundane that yeah, shouldn't be indoors, but it's still pretty normal. Like it's a medical condition, right? It's something like weird with the horse, yet cancer or whatever, right?
Yeah.
It's like, who cares? Move on. But he didn't. So now Crispy fill in this blank that he introduced. He said like there's something weird about the horse. Phil didn't fill in the blank, so Crispy fill in the blank because he introduced that there was something weird about the horse. And then we just move on from there, right? Like at some point, like, okay, there was something weird in the horse that was a bit mystical or not understood. And then we move on with that, right? It was just something, and maybe an omen and stuff like that. But then the game just move on with that. At the end, after the session, we talked about it, and Phil was a bit bitter about it, I guess, or maybe a bit upset about it. But then we discussed it then, right? And then we just like readjust the course for next session, I guess, and that's not a big deal. I think it was cool. I think it was interesting. It did change a bit the tone because he introduced something mystical or something like weird or supernatural earlier in the game. But I think room has been made to fill in the blank with something mundane, kind of like cut off the injection. So I don't know. It didn't have to be a demon baby. That's what I'm saying. Could have just been something that shouldn't be air nors, but still natural, right?
Yeah, but the question from Stochastic Agency, Brian, I want to come back to his comment because it's very important. His question was, let's say, for example, so how does the responsibility not default to an authority and the use of fiat when the group cannot come to an agreement? Let's say, for example, you have a situation, maybe it was what you were trying to express, Max, but I didn't get it. So let's say
you didn't get it?
No, I didn't get it. So I don't know what happened, but I think what you mean is that Phil was not very agreeing with what Crispy proposed with the
what I was saying, like Phil wasn't really happy with what Crispy proposed.
Yeah.
But he kind of went with it because preserving the flow of the game was more important. And then after the session, we discussed it.
Okay.
And then for the next session, we can readjust the course, right?
There you go.
We went a bit overboard there, right?
There you go. So in that example, it's very cool because it's the idea of the show must go on. So you kept rolling with it. And after you discuss, so there was no authority. It was just everybody's responsibility. And then afterward, it's the responsibility to talk about it, and agree for next session to do better or something. But his point is important. Brian's point is important because even though we want to have this very anarchist responsibility approach, everybody's responsible for everyone kind of thing. There is sometimes decision making to be adjudicated in RPG. Sometimes for some reason, because you want to have the game to move on, and I think it's hard to go around that. Even if you are a GM or you're not, I think in your example, Max, Phil was the GM, isn't it?
Yes.
That's how I understood it. Yeah, there you go. So what he did, he decided to swallow the pill, let it go, but it's not for everyone to do that. Some people cannot do that.
I think if you don't like that example, there's also two other solutions you could have, which is, players, you're at a disagreement, an impasse, characters are planning, and because it said we all can't just agree, I'm assuming this applies to both the players themselves can't agree on a ruling or something, which is, of course, like, yeah, just move on and handle that at the end. But you know, if the characters are arguing over something, you know, you see this all the time. The characters sitting outside of a door.
Can disagree with something about something, right?
Right. But when you're stuck there, and you know the old joke that it takes 30 minutes to open a door in most people's games,
Yeah.
and sometimes that's even done in character, or at least mostly in character at people's tables. But when guys, oh no, we don't want to do that. That'll make too much noise. Oh, what if we do, you know, this, that, and the other? Well, you can always just you have control of your character. You can just do something without the group. You can just decide, right? You guys are all talk. I'm gonna actually go do. You know, I think both all your plans are dumb. I'm gonna go do it myself. If nobody else is gonna help me, that's fine. And the other way is from the GM. The GM can do something like that and do a push. No, the GM could have you know, remind the group that that the world is still moving on while they're sitting there arguing and can't come to a conclusion. You know, the owner of the house they're trying to break into is starting to, you know, there's footsteps down the street and they're getting closer, and well, now it's a make it or break it moment.
And sometimes, I mean, another point, another part of Brian's point, stochastic agency, what he said is, it sometimes for some reason a group ends up in a no man's land. Like the GM doesn't know what to do, the player doesn't know nobody knows what to do, kind of thing. It's just a weird phenomenon. It happens sometimes, very rare, but sometimes it happens. It's like just each other just, and someone has kind of like to adjudicate, just to keep the ball rolling. And is it authority or a responsibility to get the thing rolling? So we end up in a semantic situation where it's becoming, and you mentioned earlier, Max, you started with it, and I was like, oh man, it's this semantic situation where it's becoming an authoritarian responsibility. You know what I mean? And now we get into 1984 George Orwell, you know, where we we use words to do whatever we want with it. But it means what it is. It's
authority and responsibility should always, authority and responsibility should always go hand in hand. When they don't, that's where the problem comes in, right? Just like, and you know, you don't agree?
You know, it's becoming semantic when you reach that level, and it's slippery. We need to kind of like, you know,
that's, I think, probably, if you take nothing else from the stream, the semantic drift and the fact that people use words in just totally different ways, objectively wrong ways in many places in this hobby, it's a big issue in this hobby. More than maybe anything else. People misuse words all the time everywhere, but I think the problem, you talk about not wanting to get academic with it, but the problem is people do talk at a given academic level. They use words like fiat, which are not part of common parlance, but they use it wrong. They use it picky choosy. They use it on one side of the aisle and not on the other side of the aisle. You know, it's so there's a big problem with not having enough typology and not having enough labels for things, and there's a big problem with what do you mean by that? You know, having to ask, wait, I don't think we're using this word in the same way here.
Yeah,
well said, man. It's very well said.
You know, that's the thing, right? To be honest, I find like in the hobby, there's a serious lack of people like talking theory and trying to talk about, like, you know, it's an intellectual hobby. We should be talking about theory, right? Just like we should be talking, you know. I was into powerlifting a lot, and people talk about theory more when it comes to powerlifting.
Powerlifting and in RPG, yeah, for sure. Powerlifting is so theoretical. It's one of those training methods that is like, you know,
it's very much so thinking. Like you think it's all those big meathead? No, it's very scientific and very thinking, man. Like kind of, it's all those like but people love to talk about theory and like training
Yeah.
and like
If
everybody got their theory and their practice and stuff like that.
if you
But
like, I would say, I mean, for those who are listening now, RPG theory, there are some very good channels. This guy, Tactic
Yeah.
Agency, Brian.
Mhm.
I mean, check him out, man. Those are this guy. Yes, Stochastic
Yeah,
Agency.
agency.
Super good, super theoretical. Guy has a lot of experience. Talk about all kinds of games. You know, they are all out there. You know, Rune Singer, Max. You know, Max is theoretical as well. There's some, you know, Crispy goes in detail about stuff. You know, but I mean, you have to be willing to go to engage into long videos, long content, because you cannot do theory in short little thing. And it's not necessarily neither about having a chick girl with blue hair and makeup. You
Hey,
know,
don't talk about judging.
I mean, it's not about that. It's about ideas. It's not
Yeah.
about the way you look. It's about ideas. You know.
You know, like when I do like those
And ideas
marathon,
are long. It's long to
Yeah.
express. It
And-
takes time.
when I do like those marathon stream, right? One of the big challenge is actually finding people nowadays that give like gym advice, that give like that have some idea about like I want to look at people at gym advice and people bringing some idea of the game, and it's hard to find some people that actually still do gym advice. A lot of people like just want to do like product review or
Mhm.
talk about like idea what you should like
Yeah.
oh, here's a scenario you can introduce in your
Mhm.
game and stuff like that, right? Like
Yeah.
but actually gym advice how you should run the game
Mhm.
or player advice how you should play the game
Yeah.
is hard to find nowadays, and it's especially hard to find if you don't want to see or to react to the same thing that has been said 1,000 times.
Mhm.
Like nobody has fresh idea in this fucking hobby, like so few.
Yeah.
All the big
It's-
channel because I also try to react to bigger channel than me, right?
Mhm.
I don't want to like punch down.
Come on, man.
So I try to react to better people than me.
but it was a good conversation. I think we said pretty much. I gotta go. I'm very tired. I have to go to work. But I mean, this conversation I think was cool, man. 2 hours of good stuff.
Yeah.
Very interesting. And I want to say thank you as well to everybody who participated in the chat. Very cool questions and comments. Oh,
Do you want to just reply to that before you leave?
yeah.
Yeah, so you say clarification. Okay, let's narrow this down from the narrative or fictional context to rules. We as a group disagree on application of the rules.
Oh,
For me, this is so
that happens
secondary.
sometimes. This is
Yeah.
this is weird as well. It's a weird place.
Yeah.
This is Fiat as well.
Like
Yeah.
I'm so much not a stickler for rules, right? Like
Okay.
sometimes like
Yeah.
somebody we can disagree on the rules, or sometimes
Mhm.
might have got a rule wrong.
Mhm.
But for me it matters so little. I'm
Mhm.
very not like we're gonna talk about after the session, right? Oh, you know
Yeah.
what the rule
Yeah,
here
yeah.
actually is that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew, but I want to do that. Yeah, that's fine. Whatever.
Yeah.
For me, the rules are there to serve they're to serve
You
the
see,
game.
that's
Mhm.
that's a cool other way to look at Fiat.
Mhm.
That's another part of Fiat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the way you interpret the usage.
Yeah.
How are you gonna use it? Some people are like, they wouldn't have to use it that way.
And to be like people like it's funny because like people accuse us, the 40 group, right, to not care about the rules. But actually we just don't discuss the rule during the session. But we do demand from people to master the rules before they show up to the session. So we don't have to discuss them during the session, right?
But in that approach, then people discuss afterward. So
Yes.
So to answer that question a little bit more precisely, I would say, I mean, it's an amazing case of figure. I mean, let's say you are playing the game, you are a player, and you notice a GM using a rule the way you don't see fit. You roll with it, discuss afterward. Just for it not to become in the session.
Yes,
and
exactly.
and it becomes part of the talk
Yeah.
to the player approach kind of thing where
Yeah.
you do
Right, because usually like they might get something like it's usually not super egregious, right? It's usually like they're gonna get something a bit wrong,
Yeah, it's very rare that
but
and
it's very
depending
rare.
on
Like,
the
wait,
game,
wait, 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 wait. That's not how it works at all, right? It's
yeah,
like that,
Yeah.
that's kind of rare. That's kind of rare. But also depending on the game, some games are so clear about the rules and the way they use it. It's
Yeah.
very rare to happen. If you look at more old school games, it's so abstract, so weird that it's gonna vary. Another aspect that we already discussed is also rules that you use and rules that you don't use, which is another big part of that as well. Some people would say, "Hey, I would have liked to roll here," and then some people say, nah, I would have not rolled there," kind of thing, as well. Can happen.
Yeah, like Zonara say, like the question is
Why is it
why is
really
the rule
important in
important?
the harmony of our table? Okay, so yes, it's a good question as well. Why is
Yeah.
the rule? Oh shit, that was too fast.
Oh, sorry.
No problem.
And his argument is to convince me that it's worthwhile, and he say like so that the player will bring up every single rule problem, but the one feels strongly about. Like I said, for me the rules are there to serve the game, right? To serve the fiction and stuff like that. The rules are there they're like the physics of the world, right? They're like the so
I would not go. I would not bother that much. But it vary on the game as well. A game that is very crunchy is more important than a
yeah.
game that is less crunchy.
But it's also a question about trust, right? Like
Yep.
As well.
if you play with somebody that he's like you can tell is bending the rules to
Mhm.
gain an advantage, that's a different question, right?
Mhm.
That's a whole different problem.
Yeah. And there has to come a point that most groups just hate talking about for whatever reason, which is if you really can't come to this person thinks the rules should be adjudicated this way, this person thinks the rules should be adjudicated that way, and then the third person sitting there thinks, come on guys, let's just move on with the game. Maybe all three of you should be at different tables. Maybe
Yes.
this group's just not. I mean, you guys just want to play the game in different ways. It's very possible that that's the case, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's, like I said earlier, today we have so many more options to find the right table for us, but people are kind of glued to, like you said, they're the same friend group since they were 12.
What Arun said there is very interesting. I said, like, to be honest, I'd be salty as X if I made up a cool character, and the DM randomly came in with some with some Fiat trap ruling.
right. That's
There's a bunch of weirdo, yeah, Fiat trap ruling. I love that. There's
Yeah.
a bunch of weirdo power tripper who are excited about all their black orb in old D&D killed character because it was poorly described.
yeah. Oh yeah.
And that's
Oh
weird as
yeah.
hell. I would especially agree with that point.
Yep.
That's weird as hell, right?
Yep.
Like man, you're fucking GM.
Yep.
What's the point of power tripping about killing character? You can just fucking like like the old fucking like, oh, rocks fall, everybody can die,
Rocks
right?
fall, everyone
Yeah.
dies. Yeah, that's if
Like
you look. Yeah, you're totally right. If you look through those old games like Tomb of Horrors and
yes.
oh god, I can't remember the name of the but pretty much any of these old dungeon crawls that are just they're the role playing equivalent of arcade quarter eaters, where a thing just sort of pops up off screen that you couldn't react to, and you're just like, oh, I just had to guess, like it just
Super arbitrary.
now I'm
That's
dead. Yeah.
the example I often ask, I often use, right? It's like, oh, you step off your apartment in the morning, make a roll, make a dex roll,
Yeah.
roll your d20, like, oh, a bus pass and it crush you to die, right? It's like that
That's
doesn't feel fair, right? That's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
random stuff, like
Right.
But that's
like,
another thing. That's another thing, though. If you talk about, like, let's say, an adventure module like Tomb of Horror, that's what you described. It's completely different. Let's say you were a GM and you use that module now, and you want to use the module raw. Wait,
Yeah,
right. So you don't use your Fiat over it. So
yeah,
like,
that's true.
That's
true.
You know what I'm saying? Like, there's no
Yeah.
orb there, or there's 5 skeletons there.
And
But
that's
if you are using your Fiat, your 5 skeleton becomes
Right.
2, or your orb is like, no way.
Yeah.
And it's
And-
just, you know,
And that's where Fiat becomes
It
not a bad
changes.
thing at all, right? When you know,
huge.
that's mainly the way that when I run modules, I look through them and I go, well, half of these combats are here just to stretch the time out, just so you show up to you show up to the game shop another week. It's like, this doesn't need to be here. It's just
maybe Fiat
yeah.
is necessary for
Right.
modules to be
right.
good.
Well, like you mentioned, you mentioned like the model of like the Tomb of Horror, right?
Yeah.
Those were specifically like tournament module
Right.
in this weird kind of time, in this weird kind of like place where like D&D was seen as a competitive activity and stuff like that, right? It's
Oh.
kind of fucking weird.
It doesn't like
Yeah,
it doesn't
that
like
doesn't,
the doesn't like
yeah.
the screen
all
or the
white. Yeah,
sleeve that it's in.
just read the title.
Yeah, Gen Con 9 dungeons. That's
Yeah, it's
they,
tournament. Yeah.
Yeah, it's tournament play. And even back in 1978, the author of this, Bob Blake, says tournament play isn't my idea of good role playing. And I'm like, that's
Wow.
fascinating. So all the guys who've been doing it for 40 plus years, it's like, where were you then? These guys were here.
And in tournament play, like, the idea of like reducing GM Fiat is there because like we should have talked about that earlier, because like the idea is like, oh, you gotta have like a fair setting that everybody can expect the same experience, no matter of the GM, no matter the table, because like we want to see, can you beat that module and how far can you go in that module, right? That's an asinine idea for me, like in role-playing game, right? That's so missing the mark to me, this idea of tournament play in RPG, right? Like you're taking something that you're missing the mark of what RPG should and could be. That's what I would say, right? Just like turning it back into some kind of like weird board game. Just play like you want to do a tournament, do a Monopoly tournament.
Yeah, it depends on place as well. Some people do like it. I mean, a good old fashioned Hero Quest night with friends with pizza, it could be fun. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yep.
But that's an RPG,
right?
You can turn it into some kind of role play.
What
that's
Mr. Ross say, if a drop kills me, it should at least be pre-placed. I think it should be like telegraph.
Yeah.
Right? You should have like not some chop.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It shouldn't spawn in under your foot because I've had that happen before. That's a good point where it's like, well, wait a minute,
a trap that happens on a twist.
Yeah, where it's like, wait, it was never, it's a gotcha, right? It's like
yes, the gotcha Fiat.
Yeah. And actually, Stochastic Agency made a video about foreshadowing that week, just recently. Foreshadowing is huge as well.
Yes,
and it's not about pre-planned neither.
Like
it's a very weird thing. Foreshadowing is the technique when the way you describe them, and it's nothing to do about railroading.
I'm gonna make a video game analogy here, right? I know people get upset about video game analogy. I think sometimes they're useful and sometimes they go too far. But I'm a huge fan of like Dark Soul.
Yeah.
The first one especially.
I wonder if you'll make the exact same one I'm thinking of right now. This is interesting.
I'm about to talk about the Dragon Bridge.
Oh, it's different. Okay, cool.
But Dark Soul like is like I always say, like Dark Soul is and even like FromSoft missed that sometime, right? Even in like, because Dark Soul for me, like the first one is great because it's a thinking man's game, right? If you take your time and you look around, there's no cheap shot. There's no there's no gotcha, right? There's a point like people like think it's a gotcha. There's a bridge that you walk on the bridge and a dragon breathe fire on you and kill you, basically. But when you were coming close to the bridge, you saw the dragon fly over you. And when you come close to the bridge, there was a bunch of dead people around and a bunch of scorch mark on the bridge. Right? Yes, you cannot see the dragon when you come in, but if you take your time, you approach the bridge and you stop and you look, you say, oh, something's going on here. Right? it's telegraphed, but people just run in and just go with video game logic and just like,
Yep.
yeah, I'm just walking around
Yeah.
and running around and stuff like that, and then they die, right?
Yeah.
And they say, oh,
Well,
that was an unfair death. It wasn't.
because
You had
most games will just stop you and they'll plop a
Yeah.
cutscene in front of you whenever something. Oh no, hold on, or Navi pops up in the corner and is like, "Whoa, wait, you don't want to walk into that spike trap because spikes kill you." It just treats
Yeah.
you like a total moron,
Yeah. Or like
which,
your character is gonna stop and say like, oh, there's a lot of scorch mark on that bridge. Probably something is breathing fire around, right? Dark Souls doesn't do that. It treats
Yeah.
you like a intelligent human being. So you're
Mm.
just coming in like you take your time, you look around, you pay attention.
Mhm.
You can say like, oh, I probably don't want to run there.
Yep.
Or just run a bit and run back, right? And then like, oh, the dragon breathes fire. And then
That-
oh, okay.
If you guys haven't played Dark Souls 1, to tell you how good that game is at doing that, I was thinking of a totally different part in the game that does this, which is the elevator in Sin's Fortress
Oh
has
yeah.
bloodstains on it. And
Yes.
when you hop on the elevator, you're thinking, well, like, what? Is there like a monster or something? And the elevator just keeps going all the way to the top. And this place is a death trap. It's full of traps, and talking to the other NPCs, you can get some of that information. And so you should be thinking, oh yeah, it's going to be there.
Yeah.
Of course, in an RPG, we could look up, unlike we can in Dark Souls. But
Can the first time I went to Sen Fortress, I went through it without dying.
Oh damn!
Because if you take your time and if you look around,
Mhm.
everything is telegraphed. Everything there's a sign that there's a trap there.
Yep.
Everything there's some kind of like tell. Even the first mimic you encounter in Sen Fortress, right?
Yep.
The chest is weird.
Yeah.
It's not along the wall.
Yeah.
Is in a weird angle.
Yeah.
And if you stop and you look at it, it's breathing, right? Just take your time and look, right? Pay attention. There's a lot to be learned from that game. It's a masterpiece. Let's not kid ourselves.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey guys.
Oh yeah.
A good night.
Yep.
Thank you for the conversation. That's very cool. And I see you guys around. For the next conversation.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was very fun.
Yes. Thank you, Samuel G, for proposing this topic and coming and showing us on that.
No problem. Thank
Great
you for
conversation.
All right.
Yeah, have a good night, man.
Yep. All right.
So yeah, you want to talk for a bit? I need to piss.
I was actually just about to wrap it up as well.
You want to wrap it up?
Yeah,
yeah. That's what we do.
I'm
almost done with the wine. I have like a little bit more, so we have to talk a little bit more. Like what Arwen said, like first run of a Dark Soul, you're scared rabbit, and 100th run, you're naked spamming cheese combo. That's how I play all my From Software game. Like I go out naked with some pants and a big sword. Yep. Yeah.
Yep.
So what else do we have to say before we wrap up? We need about like 5 or 10 minutes.
Let's see.
Wait, should I send the link to Zonorar?
You could, yeah. We could.
I'll send you the link, Zonorar, if you want to come and
share tag out. Yeah, tag in, tag out.
Yeah. Yeah. And but I'm gonna wrap it up soon as well.
Yeah.
Because but where are you? There you are. Jump in.
But yeah, I guess at the end of the day, my that's a good point also for me to leave on, is that the fiat that you do use as a GM or as a player for that matter should be it should show something, and it should be respondable to. It shouldn't be a so many times GMs use fiat, and it's like you couldn't, the rocks fall, everyone dies one. Yep. I think it tells you something about what people realize about fiat, which is, well, that's it. The GM just set the failure state. That's it. There's nothing else I can do here, right?
We talk about like being arbitrary, right?
Yeah.
And like, yes, there's this weird kind of term about like being like, yes, you're the arbiter. So like arbitrary is like something that come from, but but it shouldn't feel arbitrary. It should feel like things should feel justified by the world, right? Like a rock fall from the sky, like, oh, a meteorite fall and you just
Yeah.
die, right?
Yeah.
Could it happen? I guess it could.
Theoretically, sure, but
Theoretically. But even that, it would be like some kind of like justified, like because like thing
Yeah.
you would comes
Yeah.
the thing see and you
You
would
see
see
the
thing come
streak,
like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then it changes from a terrible Fiat to a push. Both of which are Fiat, but one of them
Yes.
is
Yeah.
something starts to happen instead of something, boom, it happens and there was nothing you could have done about it. Or like with some traps that are pre-placed, but they just set the number on it so high that it's like, well, it kind of gives you the illusion of gameplay. You can roll a die against it, but there's no actual chance that you disarm the trap or see the trap or whatever.
Oh, there you go.
Goes back to the
Guys,
quantum
I'll
ogre.
let you Zonalar, make your point. You watch the stream, share your
Yes.
thought with us. I'll go
And I'm
piss
signing
before
off
you
here
do that.
because I can tell I've got.
Well, wait until I come
some-
back, Carlo, if you can.
I have to wait until you come back. Okay, I can do that.
Yeah, so you can interact.
Oh,
with
there we
Zonalar.
go.
Yep.
Hello. All right, he's off, I see.
He's off.
Okay, good. My microphone works. Yeah.
Hmm.
Where were we? The
Yeah.
last minutes.
Fiat.
Yeah,
Using Fiat in a way to create a push and sort of telegraph it versus using Fiat
Yeah.
to just set a failure state. Everyone dies.
Right. I like the way we have established Fiat through this stream of like,
Mhm.
oh yes, it's authority because you use the Fiat, similar that you use agency, right? Like
Mhm.
you're in control, you have agency, but Fiat meaning also there's a responsibility attached to it. By having this agency, you better know the rules, or you better like understand what would make for a good experience. Like, hey, I summon spike traps under your feet because I think this would be funny,
Yeah.
or because I think this might be dramatic,
Yeah.
but you misread the situation and it's
Mhm.
just like really punishing for no good reason.
It's just annoying.
But you thought, you thought it would be a dramatic moment, like nobody would expect this. And then they ask, like, wait, why would there be a spike trap here? I already walked over this tile like 20 minutes ago.
Yeah. Sometimes something being unexpected doesn't make it good. It's
Yeah, exactly.
wow, I didn't
So-
expect a pickle to be in my soda. This sucks.
So I like while you guys were talking, I had like a recent conversation I've had with my friends. I try to keep those awake, so it's not like somebody watches this show and be like, "Oh my God, he talked about me by name." It's like it's not naming and shaming, but these are things that happen. Of
Name and shame.
yeah, yeah, but it's private groups in private games, so they can solve those problems privately. But they make great talking points for talk shows.
Yeah.
Having a Shadowrun character and using Jummer to sort all of the items, but they use an item that's from a different setting book. It's like, oh, you use an item from the Dark Sun, even though we play Forgotten Realms. Makes absolutely no sense to exist here,
Yeah.
but you use the stats.
Yeah.
Or like, I'm gonna play an
like lore lawyering, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, it kind of
and you
is.
just sneak it in there, like nobody
Yeah.
knows it happens
Mhm.
because you think you're just not mentioning it.
Yeah,
Because
we're all trusting. Oh, you know your character. Yeah, that number set. But then you get down to it and you're like, wait a minute, how is that number that high? And you're looking and it's like, well, I took this feat from this splat book and this, and it's like, whoa. If we agreed session 0, yeah, anything goes, great. But if we didn't do that, then it's like, oh man, it's that thing that's gonna live rent free in my head. That thing Matt Colville did ages ago. Crispy did a video on where he just went like, well, it's from a D&D, and we said we're playing D&D. It's like, oh, you fucker.
Therefore,
No,
I can use it. And then he looked at the camera and said, "Ha!" With this big face of, "I got you."
We sometimes use the basketball example where it's like, yeah, we can't go, oh, basketball didn't used to have dribbling in it, so you can't flag me for traveling right now. It's a rule from basketball.
Yeah.
We didn't say we're playing modern basketball. Like, you know what we're doing here, man.
That's the
Like,
gotcha kind of mentality, right? It's
yeah,
like
yeah,
that's so unfair to this fucking this
right,
fucking
right.
hobby.
Yeah.
What
But
Arun say, yeah, like
Yeah.
GM fair for over non-lethal whether like a wind kicks up is
Mm.
fine. I mean, some rule lawyer nerds want to debate the pressure wear table. But if you made it so it rained lava out
Yeah.
of nowhere, that would
Yep.
be cringe. And like
Yep.
I wanted to point that out because like that's something like Zonara said about knowing the rules, right? It's not only knowing the rules of the game, it's also knowing the rules of the world, right? The world
Yeah.
have rules,
yes,
right? The world have rules that are implied by the way you describe and by
Mhm.
the what we agreed upon to play in session 0, right? If you know, you could say it's a world where lava fall from the sky sometimes. It's like our world, but once in a while there's a rainfall. We don't know why, we don't know where it come from. It's a mystery in the world, but once in a while lava fall from the sky. Then if you bring that up, it doesn't bring the rules of the world. But if you
Mhm.
didn't agree upon those kind of things, right?
Mhm.
It's assumed that the world is going to follow similar rules about like weather and gravity and stuff like that our world. So going
Yeah.
going that, oh, is that AZ?
Yeah.
I'm doing that recording now, just got home.
That's awesome. But yeah,
oh yeah.
thank you guys for having me. I'm gonna take off here.
Thank you,
So
Tyler, for joining me.
yeah, absolutely.
Night. I'm gonna
Enjoy
wrap up
having
soon,
streams.
but like I
Yeah.
want to leave another chance to say his point too.
Yeah, no problem. I'll catch this after the fact. I'm sure it'll be interesting. But yeah, thank you guys in the chat. Thank you, Max and Zonalar and Samuel G, for having me on. I'll see you guys.
Take care, man.
Cheers.
So,
Yeah.
any
Well,
other
well,
point? The lava from the sky because you were masturbating too much. Yeah. Yes, obviously, if the player do masturbate, like if the player of the character masturbate too much, then it's fair game to bring lava from the sky. But that's a different, like that's a very specific kind of like situation.
yeah, but it's because it's in the rule book, right? That we've
Yes.
selected, or we talked
Yeah.
about it in the session 0. We
Or if it's
mentioned
just something that
something.
makes sense in the world.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. That threw me for a loop. If I had a thought, I have to catch it again first. There was this thing about like player Fiat, which I said just before to Tyler while you were gone. It's attached to having it attached to responsibility. Like, okay, you have this Fiat, but you take the responsibility to make it fit in the world, make it fit, like keep the harmony at the table, so to say. Like, I will act in character. I will not play a murder hobo unless I've already established this is the kind of character I will be playing, and the other guys like agreed to it at session 0 or something, like before we started the game. So my example of a friend who uses an item that is from a different setting, in this case Shadowrun, but the item is like from the setting book that's 30 years older, like 2050, instead of like 2087, which is current year. So it makes no sense for that item to exist, but he wants to use all the bonuses and the benefits he gains from it. So I see, okay, he's using some player Fiat, like he organized everything by himself, so he doesn't have to bother the game master. But in the end, it's just power gaming. And he's deliberately not bringing it up until it's a benefit to him and hope he gets away with it. And the question would be, why? Why are you doing that at your table? And I'm pretty sure like this is not a specific problem with that player. I can see this being a problem at everybody's game table that's in the hobby right now.
I think when you mentioned like power gaming, I think that's the big one there. When we talk about like player Fiat, GM authority, player like GM responsibility, player Fiat, and all this thing, it all boils down to power gaming. If you can get rid of the power gaming at table, if you can get this I trust table where we all understand, I'm getting a bit drunk, sorry. If you can all understand that That's what I do. Just, we can all
Go
understand
ahead.
that.
Go ahead.
What I guess like skipping a meal and drinking a bottle of wine in 2 hours. That's what I can do, right? Just like. But if you, yes, if you can get rid of the power gaming, and you all understand that what we're doing at the table here is trying to have this like this believable world and those consistent character that feel like people, right? That's what we're trying to do. You're not trying to beat the game, not trying to beat the
Yeah.
session, beat the enemy and stuff like that. We're all there working together to have something interesting come up, have this world that we feel we were part of for a few hours, right? If we have this understanding and you
Yeah.
take away this power gaming and trying to beat the GM or beat the player or tournament kind of idea, right? Then you can have those I trust game. You can introduce GM Fiat. You can introduce player Fiat, player agency, GM agency, GM independence. You can have this responsibility that your responsibility as a GM is to preserve the verisimilitude of the world. Your responsibility as a player is to present a believable and consistent character, right?
Yeah.
Then it solves all those fucking issues.
Yeah. I agree. It's a core part when I think about a power gamer is presenting him with something that more worthwhile than trying to beat the game, than
Yeah.
trying to increase your number when you attack
Yes.
or when you use a skill.
Because
Like give him
let's be
something
honest,
that's worth more.
if you're a GM, beating your player is an empty victory because you can
Yeah.
always beat the player if you want to. If you're a player, beating the GM is an empty victory because the GM let you win. Because he could beat
Yeah.
you if you want to. So clearly, this cannot be what we're trying to do here.
Mhm.
It doesn't work in this hobby. Unless you go like the tournament route where like very specific module with very specific guidelines, stuff like
Yeah.
that. But then like anyway,
That's
that's kind
like
of boring too.
Yeah, that's like how what are they called? I brought them up earlier, like adventure settings. No, not that.
Yes.
The
Adventure game.
official, yes, the official D&D tables where you get to take your character and play at the table, and you pick them up and you can go to a different gaming store as long
Yes.
as they
Adventure
advertise
League.
Adventure League. Yes,
Yeah.
they advertise they're both Adventure League, so the game master
Kick my
has
key.
absolute almost no GM Fiat because
Yeah.
he is restricted by the rules.
Yeah.
And the
And like,
players will show up to
the
take advantage
character
of
in
them.
that session, they're gonna receive that kind of loot, and they have this kind of like like yes, reward. You're missing the point of those games. It's such a shame. The hobby can be so wonderful, but you're walking right past to it because you're on a bar trip or because you're like Aaron say, I'm glad I never need to play in the Adventures League. It seemed like such a bad experience.
It's also like I know some people who have a lot of experience, especially like doing the Pathfinder side of Adventure League. A lot of players that show up with busted characters downloaded from Reddit and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Somebody
Yeah.
else made the work. They just show up to have fun by ruining basically the session, like trampling all over it and all over you in extension because you agreed to be an Adventure League game master that evening.
Joey Funster say like I wanted to address that because like I feel like I'm being called out. As I get older, I become like more and more convinced that power gaming is largely a function of testosterone. As testosterone production drops, players get more mellow and engage in less power gaming. I'm feeling called out because like I'm a big advocate of testosterone. Obviously. No,
I don't believe that is true. I think this is a much more feminine trait of oh yeah, you can't really win, so you're gonna win in a made up fantasy game,
Oh,
and
that's
nobody
interesting.
can talk back to
That's an
you.
interesting take. That's
You
an
know, it's like
interesting
it.
take.
Well, I'm painting it in a negative light in this situation, but yeah, imagine that.
Don't be ashamed of it. That's that's allowed on this channel.
Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, uh, my friend plays in 5 sessions a week. Like he GMs 3 of them every week, and then he pulls bullshit. Like for I'm telling you for about 8 years now. Like that's how often he plays, and then he pulls bullshit like using an item from a different setting that has nothing to do with the game he's playing in, without the GM knowing, without telling them, until the moment when it shows up and we have to stop and be like, wait, does that make sense? I know my rules pretty well. Can you explain that to me? And then the
Yeah.
excuses come out. And just trying to avoid responsibility, like convince the game master after the fact that betraying his trust is not a big of a deal, but never being able to say those things out loud because you just constantly avoid I don't know, like I'm trying to like analyze it after the fact, right? Like
Yeah.
but yeah, that's so weird to me, absolutely crazy. Call it wisdom.
Like I call it wisdom. I think that's the point, right? I think it's more that
Yeah.
than like testosterone lowering. Oftentimes those things can, come up at the same time with age. Your testosterone like lower down. I was not calling you out. Like I'm. I think I'm. I think I'm somebody that like might be seen as fairly IT, right? I always like, I've been to like lifting sport, and then like I'm a very violent individual. I love getting to fight into bar fight. Just
It's
like a,
also like
I know I shouldn't, but just a vice I have. I like going to the bar and getting into fights. For me,
it
that's
sounds like you like winning the fights.
no, sometimes lose. It's always good. Sometimes I got my ass kicked sometimes, and it's still a fun
Okay,
fight.
okay, okay.
But I do like winning too,
Yeah.
right? Just like, but there's this moment in the fight, especially in the bar fight, right, where you don't know what's gonna happen. I don't use this. I don't use this because I'm against transhumanism, and I see like juicing up as a step into like transhumanism. And for me, like it's always like training and getting better is always about like pushing yourself as a human inside your human logic. But anyway, that's a different topic.
All
Like
right.
I'm kind of a Kaczynski-ite kind of thing. Like I don't trust technology and stuff like that, and I like seeing human pushing themselves. But the point about testosterone and this, I feel like once you feel confident, about your status as a man, you don't feel like you need to win in RPG, right? I think
Yeah.
for me, like that's often feel not like like a not as a result of too high test, but almost as not high enough test, right?
Yeah, it's like a juvenile gamer, like
Yes.
like a bunch of juveniles saying like, ah, you're not a man yet, you can't do that, like you're too weak, or like making fun of you. So there's like this hobby, you get to be a fighter, you're level 4.
Yes.
Like, yeah, I'm gonna beat the shit out of the enemies I come across and gonna win the adventure, save the princess, slay the dragon, and simulate what they want, or like what men want through a video game.
Yes. I find like yeah, exactly. Like I find like when you're like being confident about yourself and where you are at life, and being confident about who you are, you don't feel the need to get to one up over people into this fantasy game,
Yeah,
right? You're just like, and being confident about where you are in life doesn't necessarily mean that you're in the place you want to be, but being able to accept that this is the place I'm at now. I might still want to move on. I might still want to improve myself. I still have work to do on myself and improve my situation. But this is where I'm now. I accept that, and I'm good with that. Uh, then you can get this kind of peace, and then you don't have to prove yourself in this hobby, right? It's very healthy. That's
Is there
drunk talk.
anything?
I should fucking wrap that up because I'm just doing drunk talk.
No, that's totally fine. I was thinking about GM because we did not talk about this at all. GM Fiat, or player Fiat among young players, because a lot of people like get into the hobby that are like 20 years old or younger, or they watch a popular show, Critical Role, and think, oh, I can play that. Like the books aren't that expensive.
Yeah.
Let's roll 20. How does it change in any way for younger players? So like, what can we give them as advice to take with them, except for everything we already said before?
Yeah. What and you mentioned Critical Role, and what Visser was said there is like another way of power gaming is when people have out of character rivalry, and I talk about a lot about that. Like I make a big distinction between character versus character and player versus player, right? I think character versus character is always fine, always on the table. That's great for the game. Player versus player, not so much. Player versus player takes out of a lot of the different dimension. It's when your character do something against my character. Now, me as a player, I'm upset against you, and I'm gonna use my character to act against you. But it's also always the constant like the one upmanship,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Like, you did something cool, but I'm gonna try to outdo you all the time. I'm going to try to steal the spotlight, right? That's also a form of player versus player that people don't talk about, and it's very harmful to the game.
My
And
character
this,
is even cooler than your cool character.
yes, and that can also happen between GM and player in a sense, right? Like now you're trying to do something cool with your character, but like my world and my NPC are even cooler than you, right? Very harmful to the game, and very very much a function of the topic we talked about tonight.
Great. Sounds good to me.
Anything else you want to add? I need to wrap that up. I'm being like just fucking rambly now.
No, I think the stream talked about most topics about GM and player Fiat. I think you guys nailed it on the head. It's just like this part of like when players abuse their agency, right? Or abuse the Fiat of, hey, I'm giving you control over your character, over your character sheet, right? That's something we did at our D&D game. You wrote a notepad, and now I have to read a notepad to understand what your character is about. It's like, I could enforce fucking give me a normal PDF like everybody else, so I know where to look. but also I think, no, this is fine. I'm flexible enough to be able to
Why
read
do you
this,
even need to see my character sheet?
because I need to know how I can punish you, in game.
Exactly. Yeah. Like I don't like. Do I watch do I look at my character sheet when they send it to me? Yeah, I barely pay attention to it. I say, yeah, whatever. I trust them. But yeah, no, I always do the notepad because like I don't know. I'm get used to it. I'm just used to it, right? And I know where
Okay,
things are.
yeah.
Then in a way and it's easy for me to find stuff, right? I find like the PDF character sheet, they're always like too busy trying to shift thing around,
Okay.
be clever.
Yeah,
Yeah, for me it's just much like it's no distraction, right? I just know.
right. Yeah, it's a minimalist approach. For me, like as a game master, I want to look at the character sheet and be like, everything that is written down is like a, what's it called? It's like a hook that I can
Yeah.
pull on, a lever
And
that I can play with.
and then
So
you
I'm
know
not.
there's you know there's also like on the character sheet. I on my notepad character sheet, I do copy or reword some rules too, right? Just like the rules that are like I need to know for this, I have this feat. I'm gonna reward the rules underneath so I can know, like, I can remember, right? So that's also something I
Yeah,
do
yeah,
like that. It's not necessarily easy to do in the. I don't know, just like I'm old
yes.
school, right?
Yeah, sometimes there's just no space for the one thing that's
Yeah.
important to your character, but there's no
But
space on the character sheet.
when I started playing, right, back in the 90s, in the early 90s, we didn't have like fancy character sheets, so we just like make our character on like lined paper, and we just
Yeah,
by
yeah.
pencil. So I just got the habits from there, right? Just like that's how we did thing. We didn't have access to all this technology that we have now.
True. All right.
Yes, thank you for coming there in the end, helping me finish my wine.
Time to
And
go to sleep, old man.
yes, and sharing your thought. Yeah, those guy, right? Like I don't know, like it took me longer than usual. Usually I can drink a bottle in 2 hours, but I don't know. Been talking too much. Also, like I didn't have dinner tonight, so it hit me like a brick. Then right, like.
Gotcha.
And thank you for everybody that thank you for Tyler and Same Old G, obviously, for joining in the stream earlier, and thank you for everybody that watched live and and participate in the chat, and everybody that watched on the replay and gonna leave comment and like the stream and subscribe. And on this Saturday, we're having this art game again, the Lich's Drag. Rope GM by Zunalar with Yekrep, me,
And
Nicholas, and we're gonna have some guest player too, right? Conway.
Yes. Yes, Conway is on board. He will play with us on Saturday.
Yes, and yes, I did broke 1,000 subscriber. Yeah. Max is losing con score. Can't drink the wine fast enough. I'm gonna lose my French card. Yeah. And
Once you're what's it called? It's not a percentile. What is the next digit? When you go up below a certain percentile of alcohol content, you lose your French ID. You have
yes,
to hand it in.
yeah, yeah. If I drink like more water than wine during my day. But and yeah, and so thank you for everybody to watch on the replay as well. Everybody that subscribed recently, and I'll see you on Saturday for the Lich Drags game,
The Lich's Dregs.
the Lich's Drags game, and I think the Saturday after that I'm gonna do the next marathon, and I might have a video during the week next week,
Nice, nice.
or I might not. We'll see if I have something to talk about. But yeah, take care, guys. See you soon. I'm ending the stream now. Enough rambling. Bye.